Chapter 1017. Lisa Schwann slept from noon until the morning of the next day. It was true that his internal strength was profound and his spiritual power was strong. It was also true that he could maintain high-intensity work for a long time. However, it didn't mean that he didn't like to sleep, because everyone would feel tired. It was just that people like him who practiced martial arts were more resistant to fatigue. Oh, cool. It's still better to sleep on the bed. Ha! Lisa Schwann was awakened by the sunlight. He couldn't help but stretch and sigh at the top of his lungs. The person who slept next to him was no longer there. She must have woken up a long time ago. Husband, you're awake? Han Yushi heard the sound from the bedroom. She pushed the door open and looked at Lisa Schwann with a gentle smile. Yes, I'm awake. Wife, what time is it now? Lisa Schwann rubbed his numb face and asked, Husband, it's almost noon. I'll get you some water to wash your face. After washing up, quickly eat. You've slept for almost a day and a night. Han Yushi said and turned to get water. Lisa Schwann wanted to stop her, but it was too late. After washing up, Lisa Schwann asked, Wife, where's father-in-law? Han Yushi's brows furrowed slightly, and she replied, Daddy set off with Fu Binayal when it was daybreak. Iron Egg is still at the academy. He didn't even have time to say goodbye. It was obvious that she was very worried about Han Lijing. Lisa Schwann patted Han Yushi's shoulder and comforted her softly. Don't worry, my wife. Father-in-law can be considered someone who has been on the battlefield for a long time. Now that he's just going on a long trip, he'll definitely be fine. As for Iron Egg, I'll bring him to Chang'an City. I heard that he has become the husband of Lin Wenyuan's eldest son. Bringing him to Chang and will save him the trouble of going back and forth on the weekends. At the mention of her younger brother, Han Yushi's mood finally improved. She smiled and said, Husband, if I remember correctly, Iron Egg hasn't even entered the top 10 in this monthly exam, right? This brat hadn't even done his own homework, yet he was teaching others. When he comes back this weekend, let's see if this concubine, as his elder sister, will teach him a lesson. When it came to Iron Egg's education, Han Yushi had always been quite strict. Their mother had passed away early, so Han Yushi felt that she had the obligation to nurture Iron Egg into a talent. Most of the time, Lisa Schwann couldn't even get a word in. As for how she found out that Iron Egg had become a tutor, wasn't it because Big Mouth Old who accidentally revealed it? Huh, clean up, as long as you're happy. Lisa Schwann didn't care about it at all. Anyway, with Iron Egg's thick skin, being hit 2 or 3 times was like being tickled. Han Yushi rolled her eyes at her husband and said angrily, Husband, what are you saying? What do you mean as long as I'm happy? I obviously want Iron Egg to focus on his studies and become a talent as soon as possible. Lisa Schwann waved his hand and admitted defeat. Yes. My wife is right. Let's eat. Let's go eat. In the afternoon, Lisa Schwann received news that the first batch of bean sprouts in his residence in Chang had already grown. He naturally didn't bother to make a trip personally for such a small matter. So he directly ordered San Bao, who came to deliver the news, to send part of the first batch of bean sprouts to Zuaitian Restaurant and another part to Yanwan College. San Bao accepted the order and left. Lisa Schwann looked at San Bao's back with an inexplicable expression. My wife, when the bean sprouts become popular, do you think someone in our residence will sell the method of making bean sprouts to other merchants for money? After a moment, Lisa Schwann turned to look at Han Yushi and asked. Of course, he didn't care about the little profit that the bean sprouts could bring. In fact, his main purpose was to use the bean sprouts to test the loyalty of the servants in the residence. Otherwise, he wouldn't have directly told all the servants in the residence about the method of making bean sprouts. Han Yushi frowned and thought for a moment before saying, I don't think it's possible. We have always been kind to the servants in the residence, especially our father and mother. For so many years, they have rarely been harsh to the servants. The hearts of people are made of flesh. If we are good to them, they will certainly not betray us. Lisa Schwann smiled and didn't deny it. I hope so. After saying that, he turned and walked down the mountain. He had given all the drawings to Faubert before, so he had to go and see if the blast furnace had started. Oh, if this old man's eyes are not blurry, there is a new dish today. Brothers are connected by heart. Why is the name of this dish so strange? The next day, at the Drunken Immortal Inn, after receiving a batch of bean sprouts from the Lee estate yesterday, Manager Liu asked the chef to try this dish overnight. This morning, he immediately added a new dish name to the menu of the Drunken Immortal Inn. Brothers are connected by heart. Soon, the regular customer of the Drunken Immortal Inn, Feng Jihua, noticed the new addition to the delicacies in the restaurant, so he asked with interest. When Manager Liu heard this, he was very proud because the name of this dish was something that he had thought of for a long time last night. No matter what, it was more vivid and more elegant than stir-fried bean sprouts, right? Haha, Boss Feng has good eyesight. This is the new signature dish of this restaurant. You must have never eaten it before. Why don't you try it today? This old man guarantees that this brothers are connected by heart will absolutely not disappoint you. I guarantee that after you eat the first plate, you'll want to eat the second plate. Manager Liu narrowed his eyes and started to promote with all his might. Feng Jihua laughed and said, "Haha, then let's have a plate first." In any case, the dishes of this drunken immortal and have never disappointed this old man. Now that he had become a righteous merchant personally conferred by Li Er, his life was even more carefree. Searching for delicacies everywhere could be considered as one of his usual hobbies. As for the price of these delicacies, he didn't care in the slightest. All right, moneymaker, quickly go and instruct the kitchen to give Boss Feng a plate of brothers' hearts. Manager Liu smiled and shouted at the waiter. All right, manager. The waiter responded and went to the kitchen to instruct. After approximately 7 minutes, the waiter came out with a plate of sparkling and translucent bean sprouts that emitted a faint fragrance, and then walked towards Feng Jihua's location. Boss Feng, your brother's hearts. This. Why does this look like bean sprouts? No, it's winter. How could there be bean sprouts? After Feng Jihua saw clearly what was on the plate, he spoke in surprise. Haha, Boss Feng, this isn't bean sprouts. You'll understand after you try it. Don't worry, you absolutely won't regret it after you eat it. Manager Liu was afraid that Feng Jihua would misunderstand. After all, a plate of bean sprouts was sold for over 600 copper coins, so he hurriedly came over to explain. Chapter 1018. Haha, since Manager Liu praises such a delicacy, this old man naturally has to give it a try. In the Drunken Immortal restaurant, Feng Jihua chuckled as he glanced at the sparkling and translucent bean sprouts on the plate. Finished speaking, he picked up his chopsticks and directly picked up a small handful of bean sprouts without waiting for the other dishes. The pure white bean sprouts were suffused with a clear, oily sheen, causing Feng Jihua to involuntarily swallow a mouthful of saliva. He didn't hesitate any longer and hurriedly put the bean sprouts into his mouth. Fragrant and juicy, crispy and sweet, with a trace of sour taste, causing one's appetite to be greatly aroused. I didn't expect to be able to eat such fresh and tender vegetables in this harsh winter. Too unbelievable, too delicious. The moment the bean sprouts entered his mouth, Feng Jihua couldn't help but squint his eyes in comfort. After swallowing all the bean sprouts in his mouth, he opened his eyes and praised Manager Liu, who was beside him. Eating vegetables in the winter had always been the patent of the imperial family. Some ministers who were in the emperor's favor, if they were lucky, might be able to get some vegetables as a reward from the emperor. But in any case, merchants like them would never be able to eat them. In this era where imperial power reigned supreme, there were many things that couldn't be bought with money. Being able to eat vegetables in the Drunken Immortal restaurant today made Feng Jihua extremely surprised, and he thought in his heart, the Drunken Immortal restaurant is truly a magical place. They actually sell vegetables in winter. It's fine as long as Boss Feng is happy eating. You can eat first. This old man won't disturb your meal. Manager Liu said with a grin. AI, Manager Liu, take care, this old man still has something that I don't understand. Feng Jihua hurriedly put down his chopsticks and urged him to stay. Oh, Boss Feng, please speak. Cough, cough, this old man is just curious. Why is this dish called Brothers Connected by Heart? Feng Jihua pointed at the bean sprouts on the plate and asked, "Yeah, Manager Liu, in my opinion, this is only bean sprouts. How can it be related to brothers connected by heart? But this thing is rather delicious in winter. Yes, yes. I'm tired of eating pickled vegetables, fish, and meat in winter. It's rare to encounter such a refreshing and delicious dish. The Drunken Immortal restaurant is indeed amazing." The other customers had already noticed the commotion over here and came over to join the fun. Shopkeeper Liu explained with a smile, "Hee hee, everyone, please take a look. This brotherly bond is actually made from the sprouts of soybeans. The soybeans are the elder brother, and the newly grown sprouts are the younger brother. If the two of them are connected together, what else is it but brotherly bond?" Smack, smack, smack. Feng Jihua clapped and laughed loudly as he said, "Ha ha, wonderful, wonderful. What a good name. Manager Liu, this name is good. Of course, the taste of the dishes is even better." The rest of the diners echoed, "Interesting, interesting. Shopkeeper Liu is really talented. This brotherly bond is not bad. Shopkeeper Liu, give us 2 plates." There were also some customers who caught some clues from Manager Liu's words. They asked, "Manager Liu, you just said that this dish uses soybeans to sprout. But how can soybeans sprout in winter? Don't tell me it's soaked in water?" As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at this person as if they were looking at an idiot, causing this person to feel uneasy. Shopkeeper Liu's old eyes flashed, and then he said to that person indifferently, "Wuju Lioli, this is a secret of the Drunken Immortal restaurant. Forgive me for not being able to tell you." Obviously, this was a barbarian merchant who didn't know much about the ways of the Central Plains dynasties. What is this person thinking? Didn't he ask around to find out who owns the Drunken Immortal restaurant? How dare he come here to ask for the secret recipe? That's right, he's overestimating himself. All right, let's eat. These bean sprouts are a rare delicacy. We must eat our fill today. I didn't expect to be able to eat such delicious and tender vegetables in winter. The Drunken Immortal restaurant is too amazing. That barbarian merchant's face turned green and white when he heard everyone's discussion. In the end, he apologized to Shopkeeper Liu and left. After a while, Feng Jihua had eaten his fill. He stood up and prepared to pay the bill, but he couldn't bear to part with the delicious bean sprouts he just ate. He walked to the counter of the restaurant and asked Shopkeeper Liu in a low voice, "Shopkeeper Liu, other than selling these Brotherhood-linked hearts in the restaurant, can this old man bring back some raw ones?" Shopkeeper Liu narrowed his eyes and glanced at the diners in the hall. Then he said in a low voice, "Others naturally can't, but since Boss Phone requested it, this old man will naturally give face to Boss Phone. When this old man returns, this old man will have someone send one. 5 caddies of freshly soaked Brotherhood-linked hearts to Boss Feng's residence." Feng Jihua was overjoyed. He cupped his hands and said excitedly in a low voice, "Many thanks, Shopkeeper Liu." Yanwang College's cafeteria also released a new dish today. However, unlike the elegant name of the Drunken Immortal restaurant, there were only 4 words added to the menu: stir-fried bean sprouts. At first, the students who came to the cafeteria to eat after class didn't notice that there was a new dish in the cafeteria today. The main reason was that the same meat was served every day. No one would have thought that fresh vegetables would suddenly appear. Moreover, even if someone noticed the words stir-fried bean sprouts on the menu, they wouldn't know what kind of dish it was, so they wouldn't order it. However, there was one person who did know, and that was Li Tai. The little fatty came to the cafeteria after school. When he saw the new stir-fried bean sprouts on the menu, he was shocked at first, then ecstatic. He didn't hesitate at all and directly ran to the window that sold bean sprouts. "Master, give me 3 servings of stir-fried bean sprouts and 2 bowls of rice," Li Tai hurriedly said when he arrived at the window. He was afraid that the dishes would be snatched away by others if he was late. In fact, he had ordered too many dishes. Until now, he was the only one who was willing to buy bean sprouts. "Okay, it's a total of 900 copper coins," the waiter said as he finished ordering the dishes. The bean sprouts were sold at the Drunken Immortal restaurant for 666 copper coins a plate. At Yinhuang College, it was only 300 copper coins. As for the rice, it was free. Here you go. After the little fatty paid, he immediately carried the tray and planned to find a seat to enjoy the meal. Li Ku, Cheng Chumo, and a few others who followed behind him surrounded him. Cheng Chumo said, "Wow, Chinke, your appetite is so good today. You ate so much. What kind of dish is this? Why haven't I seen it before? Oh, it smells so good. Chinke, where did you get this dish? What's its name? Tell us quickly." Li Ku sniffed with his nose and immediately said with a face full of excitement. Sun Zifen licked his lips and chuckled. "That's right. Chinke, tell us quickly. We can't enjoy the delicious food alone." Li Tai placed a tray on the empty seat beside him, pointed at the window where he had just gotten his meal, and said, "Here, it's at that window. The dish is called stir-fried bean sprouts. Chonyo, you guys go quickly." Chapter 1019. Damn, delicious, delicious. I didn't expect to be able to eat vegetables in the academy during winter. It's so good. At Yinhuang College, Cheng Chumo and the others each bought a serving of bean sprouts and sat beside Li Tai. After tasting it, Cheng Chumo immediately opened his eyes wide and exclaimed, Yes, I've been eating pickled vegetables and fish recently. This stir-fried bean sprouts came at the right time. It's really delicious." Sun Zifen's mouth was stuffed with food as he mumbled incoherently. The other students couldn't help but be curious when they saw that these typical second-generation officials of the academy were actually crazy over a dish. After hearing the name of the dish, they also went to buy bean sprouts because they believe in the taste of these second-generation officials. "Oh, delicious, delicious. How did you make these bean sprouts? They're crispy and refreshing. It's really delicious. So fragrant. It's better than meat. 300 copper coins for a serving. It's really worth it." "What do you mean it's really worth it?" "It's really worth it. No, I have to buy 3 more servings. It's really good to eat this. I want to go too. Brother Zhou, wait for me. 300 copper coins for a serving of bean sprouts." Logically speaking, it wasn't expensive. At least, that was what the students thought in their hearts after tasting the bean sprouts. After all, vegetables in the winter had always been priceless. Since when could commoners eat vegetables in the winter? Many of the students who were rich really wanted to take out 1,000 copper coins and directly buy all the bean sprouts in the academy. Of course, this idea was unrealistic because they simply couldn't carry that many copper coins. In short, the moment the bean sprouts appeared in the academy, they quickly became popular. The previously deserted window that sold bean sprouts was instantly filled with long queues. In order to increase the efficiency of the meal, the cafeteria manager had no choice but to let all the windows start selling bean sprouts, which slightly relieved the pressure of the meal. However, not everyone could afford to eat stir-fried bean sprouts that cost 300 copper coins per serving. For those poor students, spending 300 copper coins on a meal was really too extravagant. Fortunately, Yinhuang College provided many part-time jobs for them, and the salary was quite good. Overall, they could afford to eat bean sprouts once a week. And it wasn't just bean sprouts, it was enjoyment. After all, in the past, only the royal family could eat vegetables in the winter. For this lunch, the 200 caddies of bean sprouts prepared by the academy's cafeteria were all snatched by the students' tea. In contrast, the popular meat dishes in the past, such as gnawed chicken, dompa meat, and so on, were difficult to sell. In order to avoid wasting ingredients, the cafeteria manager had to reduce the price of all the meat dishes. Therefore, this strange scene appeared. The rich students were eating vegetables, while the poor students were eating meat. It was the complete opposite of what they used to be. TSK, let me tell you, the only reason you can eat bean sprouts today is all because of me. If I didn't strongly recommend Yamacho to provide bean sprouts to the academy's cafeteria, you might not be able to taste such delicious food in your lifetime. After lunch, on the way back to the classroom, Li Tai began to brag to Cheng Chumo, Li Ku, and the others. Damn, based on what you said, Chinke, you've already tasted bean sprouts. I say, aren't you a little too disloyal? You don't even share the good stuff with us, and you actually eat it alone. When Chung Chumo heard this, his face was filled with indignation. Li Tai said unhappily, I'm disloyal? If I'm disloyal, the Academy wouldn't even have bean sprouts. It's Yamacho who eats alone, not me. Ugly ox, if you have any dissatisfaction, you can go and find Yamacho. Ching Chumo's old face fell, and he immediately admitted defeat. Who's dissatisfied? Well, no matter what, it's good to have bean sprouts. These bean sprouts are really delicious. After saying this, Chung Chumo's face revealed an expression of reminiscence. He could eat, drink, and talk, but asking him to find Li Zixuan to reason, wasn't this looking for excitement? He wasn't stupid, of course he wouldn't go. The few of them immediately burst into laughter. If the Academy's cafeteria was like this, then the Drunken Immortal restaurant was even crazier. Have you heard? The Drunken Immortal restaurant released a fresh vegetable today called Brothers Linked Hearts, and it's only 666 copper coins per serving. What? Fresh vegetables? How is that possible? Isn't fresh vegetables only available in the soup department? Brother Liu, have you been deceived? It's true. I saw it with my own eyes. The juicy, crispy, and tender vegetables are definitely fresh. The world's righteous merchant Feng Zhihua just ate it, and he couldn't stop praising it. Huh, Brother Liu, what are we waiting for? Let's go quickly. 600 copper coins per serving of fresh vegetables. It's a waste not to eat it. That's reasonable. Let's go quickly. Don't lose it in a while. The news of a fresh vegetable appearing in the Drunken Immortal restaurant spread throughout the entire Chong and city in the shortest time possible. At first, people did not believe it, but later on, more and more people spread the news. Furthermore, each and every one of them swore solemnly, as if they had eaten in person. Finally, regardless of whether they had eaten lunch or not, whether they had money or not, everyone rushed madly to Shi City, to Drunken Immortal restaurant. Some people thought that even if they didn't have the money to try it, smelling the fragrance would be considered a profit, right? How could the small Drunken Immortal restaurant accommodate so many people? Thus, Manager Liu decisively launched a takeout service for bean sprouts and temporarily opened 5 sales windows so that customers could directly buy from the window and bring it home to eat. Yo, it's really fresh vegetables, not pickles. The Drunken Immortal restaurant is indeed extraordinary. To actually be able to get fresh vegetables in the middle of winter. Fragrant. Too fragrant. Fragrant and refreshing, crispy and juicy. To be able to eat such delicacies in the middle of winter, it's really not easy. Shout on quick. Quickly go and buy another serving for this old master. And a bowl of rice while you're at it. Some people even brought utensils with them when they went out. When they smelled the unique fragrance of the bean sprouts, they couldn't help but start gorging themselves on the streets of the West City without caring about their image. In an instant, the fragrance drifted through the air, making those who came to watch the fun gulp their saliva. 600 copper coins per serving. I'll buy it. Today, I want to have a taste of the vegetables in winter. Yes, yes, yes. In the past, we couldn't even eat it in the winter. This year, it's rare that the Drunken Immortal restaurant is selling vegetables. It'll be a pity if we don't try it. Many people who had a small amount of money, but weren't extremely rich and extravagant, couldn't resist the temptation when they saw others eating so happily, and one by one, they began to donate generously. Chapter 1020. Yesterday afternoon, the Drunken Immortal restaurant received more than 600 caddies of bean sprouts. Shopkeeper Liu thought that it would at least last for 3 to 5 days, but the result was out of his expectations. Because the 600 caddies of bean sprouts only lasted for 4 hours in the Drunken Immortal restaurant. Yes, you didn't hear wrong. It only lasted for 4 hours. From the time when the first plate of bean sprouts was served to the time when the bean sprouts were all stir-fried, it really only took a little more than 4 hours. All of the chefs in the Drunken Immortal restaurant's hands were sore from cooking. No, Shopkeeper Liu, it's only 3 in the afternoon, and your brother's heart is already sold out? Some of the people who heard the news late were told that the bean sprouts were already sold out when they finally got in line. They couldn't help but ask Shopkeeper Lou. Shopkeeper Lou bitterly smiled and said, "Old Master Zhu, I'm really sorry. There are too many people buying Brother's Heart today. If you come early tomorrow, you will definitely be able to buy it." Old Master Zhu sighed and said regretfully, I miscalculated. In the morning, I went to the farm outside the city. When I returned, I heard that the Drunken Immortal restaurant was selling fresh vegetables. I immediately rushed over, but I didn't expect that I still couldn't make it in time. I say, "Shopkeeper Lou, you must prepare a lot of things tomorrow. Don't sell out again. If you really can't, you can sell it at a higher price. That way it won't be sold out." When these words came out, many people who didn't lack money but didn't buy Brother's Heart today echoed, "Yes. Shopkeeper Lou, you must prepare more Brother's Heart tomorrow. You can sell it at a higher price." That's right. 666 copper coins for a set is really too cheap. In my opinion, these fresh vegetables should at least be sold for a set amount of money. When these people said this, those commoners who didn't have rich family backgrounds and just wanted to buy a plate of bean sprouts to taste immediately became anxious. However, in front of these rich people, the poor like them didn't have the right to speak. Thus, they could only look at Shopkeeper Lou anxiously. Shopkeeper Lou repeatedly waved his hand and said, That's not right. That's not right. The price of Brother's Heart is set by my family's marquee. I don't dare to arbitrarily change it. Moreover, my family's marquee has always been kind-hearted and hopes to do something for the people. Now, even my marquee feels that the price of 600 copper coins is a little expensive. If not for the cost, the price might have been even lower. How could this old man dare to go against my marquee's wishes and lower the price without permission? Once this was said, the commoners all cheered. The Marquis of Yong is truly a kind person. First, he made plows for us commoners. Then, he lowered the price of books and set up an academy to take in children from poor families for free. Now, he wants us poor commoners to taste fresh vegetables in the winter. He's really a great benefactor sent to us by the heavens. That's right. My brother-in-law's family is one of Marquis's farmers. According to him, Marquis treats them very well. Not only did we lend them money without interest, but we also waived a lot of rent for them. What do you mean? My neighbor, Lu Lauer's son, got into Yanhuang College this year. Not only did he not need money, he even earned 30 strings of coins from the college. Whoa, there's such a thing? Is that true? Why would I lie to you? I heard that the child got into the top 10 in the monthly exam. The 30 strings of coins was a reward from Marquis. This child is really promising. You should be thanking Marquis for giving those children a chance to learn. Shopkeeper Lou was a crafty person. He used this small detail to boost Li Zishuan's reputation in front of the commoners. The commoners were simple and talkative. They were grateful for Li Zishuan's kindness from the small matter of the price of the bean sprouts. As they chatted, they brought up the recent scholarship incident at the college. Li Zishuan's image in their hearts instantly improved by a few notches. What? More than 800 caddies of bean sprouts were all used up today? Evening, Yinshan residence. When Li Zishuan heard the news from San Bao, he asked in surprise, "More than 800 caddies of bean sprouts." According to the serving size of Zhuatian restaurant's dishes, 1 caddy of bean sprouts could be used for 2 plates. 800 caddies meant 1,600 plates. 1,600 plates of bean sprouts were sold out in one meal. Even those big restaurants in his previous life didn't have a dish that sold so well, right? Moreover, the price of these bean sprouts wasn't cheap. San Bao said excitedly, "Yes, young master." Shopkeeper Lou came to our residence to ask for more. So old madam gave him 500 caddies of the bean sprouts we collected today and sent the remaining 200 caddies to the college. Young master, your decision back then was really wise. San Bao is truly in awe. Most of the bean sprouts in the Li residence were distributed by the servants. Now that the bean sprouts were selling so well, old Madam Li and old Madam Li would definitely not mistreat these meritorious people. Thus, Bao was very excited and her hands were trembling. She was also Li Zishuan's bootlicker. Li Zishuan slapped the back of Bao's head and said, "What do you mean by prostrating? It's prostrating, okay? You should read more books when you're free. Do you understand?" "Yes, yes, yes. Young master, you're right. I'll definitely read more books when I'm free." Bao nodded hurriedly and giggled. Li Zishuan put his hands behind his back and said, "Ask the servants to distribute more bean sprouts and use up all the beans in the warehouse as soon as possible." "Yes, young master." Bao nodded subconsciously, but then felt that there was something wrong with Li Zishuan's words. Puzzled, he asked, "Young master, you mean that you don't want to buy more beans?" "Yes." Li Zishuan was thinking about other things and only replied with a faint yes. Bao found it hard to accept. He asked anxiously, "Young master, why don't you buy more beans? Bean sprouts are so profitable. I've already calculated that 1 caddy of beans can produce about 10 caddies of bean sprouts, which can be sold for more than 10,000 copper coins. But 1 caddy of beans only costs 8 copper coins. How can you just give up on such a profitable business?" Li Zishuan came back to his senses and saw Bao's pitiful look. He couldn't help but find it funny. He teased, "Huh? Your math skills are not bad. Where did you learn it from?" Bao didn't look happy at all. Instead, he lowered his head and replied, "Young mistress taught me when she was bored." "Lana." Li Zishuan was stunned. He shook his head and laughed. Then he looked at the dejected Bao and kicked the latter's leg. He said, "That's enough. One must be content with what one has. We can't be in the bean sprouts business forever, right? Look at how useless you are. Go back to China now." Chapter 1021. Li Zishuan definitely wouldn't be in the bean sprout business for the rest of his life. What he wanted to do in the Tang Dynasty was to become a technological powerhouse, not to develop the country through commerce. The so-called commerce was just a tool in his hands. As an engineering nerd, what he valued was technology, not small profits. Thus, he definitely wouldn't continue relying on bean sprouts to get rich for long. He was just eating the fish head market. As for the fish body and fish tail, he intended to let others eat them. As for who he would give them to, that would depend on the situation later on. The popularity of the bean sprouts had only just begun. On the second day, the 1,000 gene of bean sprouts prepared by the drunken immortal and were sold out in a single day. Because those who had eaten the bean sprouts and came from well-off families all became repeat customers of the Connected Brothers. As for those who hadn't eaten the bean sprouts, after hearing the praises of the Connected Brothers for the entire day, they naturally came over to try it. Thus, the number of customers who came to buy the bean sprouts on the second day was much more than the first. It was worth mentioning that the head eunuch in charge of purchasing in the palace had specially come to the drunken immortal in to purchase a batch of bean sprouts. The bean sprouts he purchased were naturally raw. After all, it was food that the heir ate, so how could he hand it over to someone outside the palace to cook? The street in front of the drunken immortal was bustling with activity. Many people were buying and eating on the spot. Those who had carriages sat in them, while those who didn't have carriages found a place to eat on the street. Upon seeing this, the shopkeepers of the restaurants and shops beside the drunken immortal decided to clean up their shops. They placed some empty tables and chairs inside and outside the shop to provide a place for those who were eating bean sprouts on the street. Of course, there was a charge for this. Outside the shop, it was cheaper at 5 copper coins per seat. Inside the shop, it was more expensive at 20 copper coins per seat. They even provided free tea. If those customers took a fancy to the items in the shop and bought them, they would earn even more. Because the drunken immortal knew the secret to growing bean sprouts, they ate the meat at the front. Even though the surrounding shops didn't know the secret, they still had to follow behind to drink some soup, right? On the second day, the 1,000 gene of bean sprouts of the drunken immortal were all sold out. Even if the surrounding shops followed behind to drink soup, they still earned a fortune. Every shop earned at least 5 strings of coins, more than usual. The third day. The drunken immortal restaurant once again exerted its strength and prepared 1,100 pounds of bean sprouts. but it was still unable to hold off the crazy diners. As the only restaurant that could provide fresh vegetables in the winter, it was difficult for the drunken immortal restaurant not to become popular. Through this matter, it had once again established its position as the overlord of the restaurants in Chang'an City. As for Yanwang College, the supply of bean sprouts had been increased to 300 caddies. However, the students still finished the 300 pounds of bean sprouts. After all, there was no lack of rich second generations in the academy. It was common to see one person eating several portions of bean sprouts. For example, Li Tai and Chung Chimo. On the fourth day, the drunken immortal restaurant prepared more than 1,500 caddies of bean sprouts, and they barely managed to last until the restaurant closed at 5 p.m. Although this had not reached the daily consumption limit of bean sprouts for the people of Chang, and it had already reached the physical limit of the chef of drunken immortal restaurant. They were really too tired these few days. After manager Liu promised to double the salary for this month, the chefs felt a little better. The drunken immortal restaurant continued to become popular because of the bean sprouts, which naturally attracted the envy of others. After all, the daily consumption of over 1,000 caddies of bean sprouts was close to 200 strings of coins. Although the cost of bean sprouts was unknown, it should not be too high. This was truly a profitable business. How is it? Is it still not working? In Yunlai restaurant, a middle-aged man with a full beard had his hands behind his back and an ugly expression on his face as he asked the servant in front of him. Looking at his face carefully, it was the barbarian merchant who had asked manager Liu how to distribute bean sprouts. Wuzhu Lulin. Master, it's still not working. Beans are basically rotten after being soaked in water for a day and night. They can't be eaten at all, let alone sprouts, the servant said with a bitter expression. Hearing this barbarian merchant already knew that the drunken immortal restaurant's brotherly connection was soaked in beans. In fact, this barbarian merchant was not the only one who knew that the brotherly connection was soaked in beans. Basically, anyone with half a brain would be able to figure it out. There were even more people who secretly distributed bean sprouts. This was also one of the reasons why Li Zixuan did not expect the bean sprouts to make a lot of money, because this kind of low-tech thing could be easily understood by others. It was just a matter of time. Take the nibbled chicken, for example. 2 months after it was released, there were already imitations on the market. If he did not want others to imitate it, he could only raise the technology of the product. This was why he had always paid attention to technology. The workers in the workshop were currently receiving the best treatment in the entire Great Tang. Bastard, this old man has spent so much money to raise you, but you can't even do such a simple thing. You're all a bunch of trash. The middle-aged barbarian merchant roared. With a pah, he smashed the vase on the table beside him. At this moment, a beautiful barbarian woman with a seductive figure and revealing clothes walked over. That barbarian woman walked over and grabbed the barbarian merchant's hand. Then, she placed it on one of her peaks for warmth and said coquettishly, "Master, don't be angry. It's not like there's no other way." After saying this, the barbarian woman turned to the manservant and said, "You can leave for now." "Yes, madam." The manservant hurriedly withdrew as if he had been pardoned. The barbarian merchant's interest had already been piqued. At this moment, seeing that there were only the two of them in the room, he hurriedly asked, "Madam, just what kind of brilliant plan do you have? Hurry up and tell this old man." The barbarian woman smiled sweetly, her smile bewitching as she said, "Master, if we can't make it ourselves, we can steal it." "Steal? How we steal it?" No matter how bewitching the barbarian woman's smile was, the barbarian merchant remained unmoved. This was because at this moment, he only had eyes for small amounts of money. The barbarian woman coquettishly said, "Master, you've been intelligent all your life, so how can you be so foolish now? The drunken immortal in's heart-linked brothers sells an astonishing amount every day. There must be a lot of people involved in the production. Snow Cherry has already asked around for master. These heart-linked brothers are soaked in soybeans by the servants of the Eternal Peace Marquis estate. As long as we can get in touch with the servants of their estate and entice them with benefits, we won't have to worry about not knowing how to soak soybeans, right? The barbarian merchant's eyes darted around, and then he was overjoyed. Ha! Wonderful, wonderful. My snow cherry is really exceptionally intelligent. Madam, you've done a great service this time. Once it's done, this old man will definitely dote on you. Even though there were risks in stealing secrets, especially when they were stealing secrets from Lisa Schwann's estate, many merchants were willing to take risks in the face of enormous benefits. Master, you're so hateful. Chapter 10:22. Miss Lien, are you really not going to reconsider? In Shi City, in a room of a tea house, a young woman in a thick dress said to a little girl. This little girl was the Li residence's maidservant. Lien, no, no, I will never betray young master and young madam. Lien shook her head fiercely and replied. Today, she had come to the pharmacy in Shi City to get some medicine for her mother. However, a woman stopped her halfway and said that she had a way to treat her mother's illness. She was overjoyed and followed her to this tea house. However, she did not expect that woman to actually want to use 100 strings of money to exchange for the Li residence's bean sprout's secret formula. Lon subconsciously rejected it in her heart because the 2 strings of money in her purse to buy medicine were lent to her by Han Yushi yesterday. With that, Lien turned to leave. However, the 2 burly men guarding the door took a step forward and blocked her way. Miss Pingxiang, what do you mean by this? I'm from the Marquis's residence, and this is the foot of the Emperor. Do you want to commit murder? A hint of panic flashed in Lien eyes, but when she remembered that this was the capital, she calmed down slightly and forced herself to remain calm. Impudent. All of you leave. Don't scare the guests. The woman waved her hand and scolded the 2 burly men at the door. Then, she went forward and grabbed Lien's hand. She smiled and said, Hee, Lien, you might have misunderstood what I meant just now. I didn't ask you to betray the Marquis of Yong'an. I just want to know how these soybeans are soaked into bean sprouts. Don't worry. After I know, I will definitely leave Chong and immediately and go to other counties to sell bean sprouts. Naturally, I won't harm the Marquis of Yong'an's interests, and you can't be considered as betraying the Marquis of Yong'an. Don't you think so? Lien frowned slightly and remained silent. Seeing this, the woman continued to persuade. Besides, your mother is sick now. You definitely don't have enough money, right? Sister Lien, as long as you tell me the bean sprout recipe, not only will I give you 100 strings of cash, I will also help you find the most famous doctor in the world to treat your mother. Think about it. When your mother recovers, you will still have 100 strings of cash. Why would you still need to be a maidservant in the Marquis's residence? At that time, you will become a rich family's young miss. Don't you think so? Lien's expression finally changed. She opened her mouth, hesitated for a moment, and then said, Is this what you said true? Will you really leave Chong'an? Will they really find a doctor to cure my mother's illness? The young woman was overjoyed. She pointed to a black package on the table and smiled sweetly. Of course. Why would I lie to you? Here is the 10 strings of coins. As long as you tell me the secret recipe, I will give you the 10 strings of coins immediately. After Big Sister verifies your method, I'll give you the remaining 90 strings of money. As for the doctor, I can send the doctor to your house tomorrow to treat your mother's illness. What do you think, Miss Lien? Lien's little face was instantly filled with conflict. Under the young woman's overbearing gaze, she thought for a long time and still refused. I can't say. I don't know if you're lying to me. Let me think about it. It's getting late. I have to go buy medicine for my mother. With that, she hurriedly ran out of the door. The 2 men outside the door wanted to stop her, but they didn't hear the woman's order and could only let Lien leave. In the side room, after Lien left, a woman with blonde hair and blue eyes walked out from behind the screen. This was none other than the concubine of the merchant, Wuzhu Yoshi. Madam, she didn't agree. This servant has failed. Madam, please punish this servant. The young woman bowed and said, The Hu woman called Snow Cherry waved her hand, and then she lifted the young woman's chin and chuckled. Ha ha, Ling Ming, this isn't your fault. Besides, that girl has already been tempted. Whether she succeeds or fails is still unknown. Think of a way to ask her out tomorrow. If 100 strings of coins isn't enough to move her, then 200 strings of coins. If 200 strings of coins isn't enough, then 500 strings of coins. If this matter is done well, I will let the old master favor you well. Yes, it was she who had ordered her maid to tempt Lien into revealing the secret recipe for bean sprouts. She had not personally appeared because she was a Hu. Most Tang people looked down on Hu, and Lien was from a marquis estate. There was a high chance that she would also look down on Hu. Moreover, she was hiding behind the scenes. Once the matter was exposed, she would be able to escape unscathed. Thank you, madam. The young woman softly thanked her. Mother, the medicine is here. I'll help you up to drink it. South of Chang and City, Don Square. In a small, run-down courtyard, Lena held a bowl of medicine as she spoke to an old woman lying on a bed. Haa, Lien how many times has Mother told you not to waste money? Mother has lived long enough. I can't be a burden to you. The old woman looked at her daughter, whose face was still covered in ash, and sighed. Mother, what are you saying? You gave birth to me and raised me. No matter what, your daughter will take care of you for the rest of her life. How can you call me a burden? Lien hurriedly said. The old woman sorrowfully said, Lien, Mother has let you down. You lost your father when you were young. Mother couldn't raise you, so I could only sell you to Master Li as a maid. Mother only gave birth to you, but I didn't raise you. Now, Mother can't be a burden to you. Mother, if you say such things again, Lien will get angry. Lien stomped her feet and said, Besides, it was fortunate that you sold me to the Li estate back then. Old Master and Old Madam are both kind people, and Young Master and Young Madam are also good masters. Moreover, Young Master is favored by the Emperor and will definitely have a bright future. Who knows how many people want to be a maid in the Li residence? It's a pity that they don't have this fortune. The old woman agreed with Lien words. She said with a face full of joy, Lien you're lucky to have a master like Marquis. Otherwise, I would really regret it for the rest of my life. Mother prays for the Marquis of Yong, and every day. I pray that he will be healthy and live a long life. I pray that his family will prosper for generations. This way, Lien you will have someone to rely on. Enough, Mother. Don't say such things. The medicine is getting cold. Quickly drink it. Lien hurriedly said with some complicated feelings in her heart. All right, but Lien you're not allowed to secretly buy medicine behind Mother's back next time. Mother's illness is actually almost healed. Understand, Mother. Only then did the old woman drink the medicine in the bowl. Then she muttered to herself, This Marquis of Yong, Anne's wife, is really kind. She lent you money and actually didn't set a time limit for you to return it. She and the Marquis of Yong and are really good people. If anyone dares to harm such good people, Mother will definitely turn into a vengeful spirit and seek revenge after death. Lien body couldn't help but tremble. The face of the young woman who came looking for her during the day involuntarily appeared in her mind. Almost instantly, she made a decision in her heart. Chapter 1023. Marquis, Yinshan Residence, Li Family. Pang Feiji whispered something into Li Zishuan's ear. Li Zishuan's face darkened, and his eyes flashed with a cold light. He muttered, 12? Huh, there are so many people who don't want to be left out. Pang Feiji cupped his fists and said, Marquis, do you want me to capture all these servants and send them to the Imperial Governor's office? Li Zishuan pondered for a moment and waved his hand. No need. Give them one more chance. Let's see if they can rein it in. Today, I will return to Chang with you. Pang Feiji did not understand, but he still cupped his fists and said, Yes, sir. Not long after, the master and servant rode towards Chang and City. As for Han Yushi, she returned to Chang, and on the first day of the bean sprout sale, to take charge of the situation. Young master, you're back. The little bootlicker, Sanbao, who was guarding the entrance of the Li residence, said excitedly when he saw Li Zishuan return on his horse. Yes. Have you been reading a lot lately? Li Zishuan threw white ease reins to Sanbao and asked casually. Sanbao took the reins and scratched his head. I've been studying. Sanbao is still studying when he's in the toilet. Li Zishuan did not know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head and went straight to the front hall. Little Xian is back. Although Chang and was not far from Yinshan residence, as long as they did not see each other every day, Madame Li was still worried about her son. When she saw Li Zishuan return, her face immediately revealed a look of warmth. Yes, Li Zishuan agreed and sat down to chat with his parents for a while. At this time, Yi Guozhong happened to pass by the door. After glancing at Li Zishuan in the room, he stopped his tracks and said, Yo, little Xian is back. Li Zishuan stood up and said yes. How are grandfather and grandmother recently? After getting along with Yi Guozhong and old Madame Yi for a long time, Li Zishuan found that they were not bad people. Old Madame Yi, needless to say, had always been very kind. Although Yi Guozhong was a bit extreme, Li Zishuan asked himself what had happened in the past. If he were in Yi Guozhong's position and knew that his daughter's sweetheart was destined to be a jinx, he would probably do something to break up the couple. Now that this old man had stepped down from his position as the patriarch of the Yi family, his personality had also become more open-minded. After all, he had once managed a large family clan. His vision and experience were still very sophisticated. Many times, he could give Li Zishuan a lot of pertinent suggestions, which benefited Li Zishuan a lot. Yes, everything was good. Little Xian, come out. Grandfather has something to say to you. Yi Guochan nodded and waved his hand. Li Zishuan naturally agreed. After informing his parents, he followed Yi Guozhong to an old ginkgo tree in the northwest corner of the courtyard. Little Xian. Recently, our family's bean sprouts have been selling very well in Chang'an. You should know about it, right? Yi Guozhong asked Li Zishuan with his hands clasped behind his back. Li Zishuan understood and roughly understood why Yi Guozhong called him out. He replied, Of course I know. Yi Guozhong nodded and said with a heavy heart, Little Xian, although the Li family is small in number, with your position in the imperial court, it's only a matter of time before you become a powerful family that dominates a region. Now that you're in charge of the Li family, you have to consider the interests of the family. For example, bean sprouts are a profitable business, but once others learn how to make them, you'll be in a passive position, little Xian. In recent days, this old man has noticed that some servants in your residence have been leaving the residence very frequently. I reckon that it's very likely that other restaurants, merchants, or families want to get the secret recipe of bean sprouts through them. But you actually turn a blind eye to it and hid in Mount Yinshan to live a leisurely life. You're really... At the end, Yi Guozhong's old face was a little red. Obviously, he was angry. If the person in front of him was his own son, he would have slapped him. Li Zishuan was happy in his heart. He secretly thought that the old man's vision was quite shrewd and ruthless. He could actually see the hidden danger in the residence. Seeing Yi Guozhong's angry face, Li Zishuan quickly cupped his hands and said, Grandfather, please calm down. In fact, I've already expected this. But in my opinion, the Li family can't monopolize the bean sprouts secret recipe forever. This method isn't difficult to learn. During the process, you just need to pay attention to changing the water and air of the bean sprouts. Even if the servants in the residence don't say it out, the people outside will definitely be able to figure it out within a month or two. Grandfather, don't you think so? Yi Guozhong pondered for a moment and sighed. He nodded and said, According to what you said, it's really possible. But if you strictly ordered the servants not to leave the residence at will from the beginning, perhaps the Li family could earn a few more months' worth of bean sprouts. But now, I estimate that in less than 5 days, other restaurants in the city will definitely start selling bean sprouts. It's obviously you who thought of this thing, but it's benefiting others so quickly. Alas! Li Zishuan couldn't help but laugh and said, Haha, grandfather, this matter hasn't reached the end yet. It's still uncertain who will benefit from who. You just watch carefully. Let's see who will have the last laugh between your grandson and those secret thieves. Yi Guizhong was startled. He, who was old and experienced, instantly understood that Li Zishuan definitely had a backup plan. He sighed and said, "Haha, looks like grandfather has underestimated you." "Fine, this old man won't meddle in other people's business. I'll wait outside for your good news." After saying that, the old man hummed a tune and walked away. Li Zishuan was just about to go to the Drunken Immortal and to take a look when he saw Han Yushi walking over with a servant girl following behind her. "Husband, are you free now? This concubine has something to tell you." Han Yushi's expression wasn't very good. After coming in front of him, she opened her mouth and said, "Wife, if there's anything, just say it. But, husband, why don't we go inside and talk?" Han Yushi turned her head and glanced at the servant girl, feeling troubled. Plop. "Young madam, there's no need. Lianer did something wrong and should be punished. Young madam, you and young master don't have to give Lianer any face." Before Li Zishuan could speak, the servant girl knelt on the ground with a plop and then kowtowed to Li Zishuan with tears in her eyes. Liena. After Li Zishuan heard the name, his heart skipped a beat, but his expression didn't change. He pretended to be surprised and said, "Madam, what does this mean? What did she do wrong?" Han Yushi looked around and wanted to say something, but hesitated. Lien cried and said, "Young master, Lien has let you down. I'm sorry, old master, madam." Lien betrayed the Li family. "I beg young master to send Lien to the authorities for punishment." Li Zishuan hurriedly said, "Quickly get up. What kind of nonsense is this? Let's go. If there's anything, let's talk in the study." Although there were very few people who came to the place where they were standing now, it didn't mean that there weren't any. At the very least, Li Zishuan had already heard footsteps approaching, which was why he said that. Chapter 10:24. Young Master, that's what happened. Lien has let young master and young madam down. In the study, Lien told Li Zishuan everything that happened in Shi City the day before. When she was done, her tears began to flow uncontrollably again. Li Zishuan said solemnly, "That's enough. Stop crying. From what you're saying, you haven't told that person the secret recipe for bean sprouts." Lien shook her head and said, No. At that time, Lien felt sorry for young master and young madam and hoped that woman would help find a doctor to cure my mother's illness. At that time, Lien's heart was in a mess. I really didn't know what to do, so I ran out. "They didn't stop you?" Li Zishuan asked again. Lien looked up and replied, "No. Oh, no." When Lien wanted to leave at first, two men wanted to stop Lien, but they were scolded by that woman and left. But later, Lien was confused by that woman's words, so they didn't stop her. Old master, old madam, young master, and young madam usually treat Lien so well, but Lien's heart wasn't strong enough and almost betrayed young master. "I beg young master to send Lien to the authorities for punishment." Han Yushi hurriedly pleaded with Li Zishuan. "Husband, Lien hasn't leaked the secret, so don't punish her. Besides, the reason why she was greedy was because of her filial piety to her mother. Don't send her to the authorities, okay?" "Woo-woo. Young madam, don't say any more. Lien doesn't have the right for you to plead for mercy. Lien deserves to die." Lien kowtowed to the ground and cried bitterly. Han Yushi lent her money yesterday to buy medicine for her mother, but for a moment, she wanted to betray the Li family. From last night until this morning, the more she thought about it, the more she blamed herself. In the end, when she saw Li Zishuan return from Yunshan, she finally mustered the courage to surrender. Li Zishuan patted his wife's shoulder and looked at Lien, who was kneeling on the ground, and said, "All right, get up. Since you can rein in a horse at the edge of the cliff, what reason do I have to punish you? Get up." "But, young master, enough. Say no more. Just get up when I tell you to. Don't tell me you won't even listen to me." Lien still wanted to say something, but Li Zishuan reprimanded her with a straight face. Thus, Lien hurriedly got up from the ground. Han Yushi's face lit up, and she hurriedly said, Many thanks, husband. Li Zishuan waved his hand and shook his head as he said, Lianer, although you didn't commit any major mistakes, you should also be punished for minor mistakes. I cannot expel you from the mansion, but you must do something for me to make up for your mistake. Do you agree? Lien said with a look of joy. Liener agrees. As long as young master doesn't chase Liener out, Liener will agree to do anything. Han Yushi looked puzzled, but Li Zishuan smiled and whispered, How about this? I heard what you said just now. That woman clearly wants to cast a long line to catch a big fish. Go to Shi City again tomorrow and tell that woman that you've thought it through and can give the secret recipe to them. Liener covered her mouth in shock and shook her head desperately. No, don't. Even if I die, Liener won't betray young master. This silly girl thought that Li Zishuan was deliberately testing her. Li Zishuan said helplessly, Stupid girl, young master, naturally have my reasons for letting you do this. Just do as I say. I have a backup plan. You can give the secret recipe to them, but they must give you 1,000 strings of coins in one go. If they don't agree, then you can sell the secret recipe to others. Understand? Lien saw that Li Zishuan said it in a serious manner and didn't seem to be bluffing her, so she was slightly relieved. However, after hearing Li Zishuan say 1,000 strings of coins, she couldn't help but say, Young master, if you ask them for 1,000 strings of coins, I'm afraid they won't agree, right? Li Zishuan smiled faintly and said, Don't worry, this secret recipe is definitely worth 1,000 strings of coins. If they aren't willing to pay you so much money in one go, just say that our manor has been very strict recently. This young master has already sent several spies to the authorities. You plan to take this money and immediately leave this place, so they have to pay you all at once. This way, they should believe you. Liener listened and felt that Li Zishuan's words were very reasonable, so she said, Then, young master, Liener will tell her like this tomorrow. When the time comes, Liener will bring all the money back and get it to young master. Li Zishuan laughed and said, Ha, don't worry if you do it well. I will reward you handsomely. Liener doesn't ask for a reward. I just want to make up for my mistakes. Young master, young madam, Liener will leave first. Liener wiped her tears and then left. In the study, Han Yushi looked at Li Zishuan and finally asked the question in her heart. Husband, I don't understand why you want Liener to deliberately leak the secret recipe. Li Zishuan stroked his wife's long hair and said with a smile, I have a backup plan. Wife, just watch carefully. Seeing that Li Zishuan was keeping her in suspense, Han Yushi was too lazy to get to the bottom of it. However, she said worriedly, but there is a loophole in what husband taught Liener to say just now. If those people go to the authorities to investigate and find out that we haven't sent any servants to the authorities recently, then wouldn't Liener's words be exposed? Li Zishuan's gaze turned cold and said, Who said that we haven't sent any servants to the authorities? We'll send them out before dark today. Han Yushi was stunned and immediately understood the meaning in Li Zishuan's words. Her face couldn't help but turn cold. Husband, you mean? That's right. There is more than one spy in our residence. After dealing with Liener's matter, Li Zishuan waited for another 2 servants and 3 servants to surrender in the afternoon. For those who surrendered, Li Zishuan gave them the same instructions as he had for Liener previously. However, according to the information provided by Pang Feiji, there were a total of 12 servants and servants in the residence who had recently been in contact with the outside world. In other words, there were still 6 people who wanted to get away with it. At 5:15 p.m., in the study room, Li Zishuan was half leaning on the armchair. He was resting with his eyes closed, but he suddenly opened them and said to Pang Feiji, Go, arrest them. Pang Feiji's spirit was lifted. He was finally going back to his old profession. He bowed and cupped his fists, saying loudly, Yes. Marquis. After saying that, he strode out of the door. Not long after, the entire Li residence was in chaos. Where is Zhao Si? Feeding the horses in the backyard. Go. To the backyard. That's Zhao Si. Go. Arrest him for me. Hey. Brother Pang. Why are you arresting me? Umph. Then you should ask yourself. Look after him. The rest of you, follow me to arrest Han Xiaoyang. Chapter 1025. The next day, the news of the Marquis Yong and sending 6 servants to the capital office for investigation spread like wildfire, causing quite a stir in Chang'an. Many people did not understand why the usually easygoing Li Zishuan would suddenly make things difficult for a group of servants. This was against the rules, but there were some who had ulterior motives. When they thought of what they had done recently, their hearts sank. Those with backgrounds quickly destroyed the evidence and cut ties with Li Zishuan. Those without backgrounds planned to quickly liquidate the restaurants under their names, pack up their valuables, and flee Chang, and before Li Zishuan came looking for them. However, no one noticed that Han Yushi had brought a few servants and maids back to the Han Manor under the escort of Pang Feiji. Sai, what should we do now? The Marquis Yong and is now in the royal court, and the military officers in Chang, and are all familiar with him. If he really wants to investigate, it won't be long before he finds me. This is bad. In Yunlai restaurant, Wuzhu Lui sat on the couch with a frown and sighed. Obviously, he had also heard about the Li residents sending servants to the capital office last night. Old master, you don't have to worry too much. You didn't show up from the start. No matter how powerful the Marquis Yong is, he won't find you in a short time. Huji Ingxue consoled. Wuzhu Lui shook his head and sighed. This is a matter of time. Just because he didn't find out now doesn't mean he won't find out in the future. I have to consider moving the restaurant to another state capital. What's hateful is that after all our efforts, not only did we not get the bean sprout recipe, we even offended the Marquis Yong in Sai. Old master, madam, the maid from the Marquis residence called Lian is here again. At this moment, a woman in a long dress walked in and bowed. This Han Chinese woman was Ling Ming, who had come in contact with Lian. A trace of panic appeared on Wuzhu Liuhui's face. He subconsciously thought that Lian had brought the Marquis residence's guards to capture him. Hu Jingxue was rather calm. She turned and asked, "Is she alone?" Ling Ming replied. In reply to Madam, she came alone and is currently at the tea house next door. She said that she has something important to discuss with this servant. Snow Huji's eyes lit up as she said excitedly, "Old master, this maid-servant might have thought it through. As long as we get the secret formula from her, we can leave Chang and immediately and head to other counties. We can still make a fortune." Wuzhu Luchu closed his eyes and thought for a while, then said, "All right, Ling Ming, go and get in touch with that maid again. You must get the bean sprout recipe. Since we've offended the Marquis of Eternal Peace, then we can't return empty-handed." "Yes, master. 1,000 strings of cash? Miss Lian, are you joking with me?" A quarter of an hour later, in a tea house not far from the cloud-gathering wine shop, Ling Ming heard Lian request. She couldn't help but stare at Lian as if she was looking at a madwoman. "I'm not joking." Lian frowned and said, "Elder sister, think about it. This bean sprout can bring my young master close to 200 strings of cash every day. If you get it, then it won't be long before you have tens of thousands of strings of cash. I took the risk to come and tell on you. Isn't it reasonable for me to take 1,000 strings of cash? Besides, elder sister, you should have heard about it, right? My young master sent all 6 servants who might have leaked the secret to the authorities yesterday. Fortunately, I came out to buy the medicine that day with young madam's permission. Otherwise, young master would definitely suspect me. But I definitely don't dare to stay in this Marquis residence. I plan to sell the secret formula and then take the money to escape Chang'an. So if you want the secret formula, not only do you have to give me 1,000 strings of cash, you have to give it all at once. I don't have the time to wait for you to verify the secret formula in Chang'an City. Of course, if elder sister thinks it's too expensive, I can find other buyers." After saying that, Lian actually turned to leave. It was obvious that she had nowhere else to go and was in a hurry to cash out and leave the house. "Hey, Miss Lian wait." Ling Ming was shocked and hurriedly said, "Elder sister sympathizes with Miss Lian's experience but 1,000 strings of cash is really too expensive. I'm afraid it's difficult for elder sister to make the decision alone. So, Miss Lian, please wait for a moment. I will discuss with my lord, my husband, before we make a decision. Lian frowned and made a very difficult expression. After a while, she finally nodded and said, "All right then, elder sister, hurry up. I must leave Chang and city today." And don't worry, Miss Lian, elder sister will be back soon. 1,000 strings of cash? This girl really dares to ask for an exorbitant price. Wu Wei and Hu Ji, Snow Cherry, were actually in another wing of the tea house. After Ling Meng reported Lian Er's request to them, Hu Ji sneered and then looked at Wu Wei and suggested, "Master, why don't we capture this girl and torture her? When the time comes, we don't have to be afraid that she won't tell us the secret formula." Wu Wei's face darkened, and he waved his hand and said, "This is not the time to complicate things. If things get out of hand, I'm afraid we won't even be able to leave Chang'an City. Besides, this secret formula is indeed worth 1,000 strings of cash." Hu Ji, Snow Cherry, could not help but say, "Master, what if the girl tells us a fake secret formula?" Wu Wei's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he sneered, "Then if she's heartless, don't blame me for being unjust. But looking at her current situation, it's unlikely that she will come out to deceive others and cause more trouble for herself. Ling Meng, go and promise her that in the afternoon, you will send the money to her house. Hand over the money and the secret formula." Ling Meng bowed and said, "Yes, master." Similar scenes were happening in different parts of Chang and city today. In the afternoon, around 5 in the afternoon, the 2 servants and 4 maidservants that Li Zishuan sent out all returned with a full load. On this trip, the 6 of them had cheated nearly 8,000 strings of cash because one of them, Wang Xiaojiang, was secretly invited by the Chui family. Towards his old enemy, Li Zishuan showed no mercy and directly asked Wang Xiaojiang to ask for 3,000 strings of cash. The Chui family's duke hated Li Zishuan to the core and wanted to disgust him. Moreover, the income brought by the bean sprouts was indeed considerable. They could earn at least 4,000 to 5,000 strings of cash in a month. Although the Chui family had a large business, if 4,000 to 5,000 strings of cash were to fall on the ground, it was impossible for them not to pick it up. The most important thing was that Wang Xiaojiang was an actor. He even acted as the duke, so he was able to cheat the Chui family of 3,000 strings of cash. According to the information from the 6 servants, Li Zishuan immediately asked Pang Feiji to secretly bring back the 8,000 strings of cash in a carriage from their houses. At this point, the operation to clean up the leakers had finally come to an end. But the operation to punish the leakers had just begun. Chapter 10:26. The Chui family was the most influential force in the operation. The rest of the thieves were mostly self-employed, people like Wu Lulin who wanted to make a fortune overnight. Compared with the Chui family, they were nothing more than a bunch of rotten shrimps. But no matter if they were big fish or small shrimps, to Li Zishuan, as long as they provoked him, they would have to pay the price. Not only would these 6 families have to pay a fine of thousands of strings of coins, they would also face a trade blockade from the Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce in the future. The next day, Wu Lulin and the other secret thieves took the gold and silver that they had packed up yesterday and fled Chang'an City. Although Li Zishuan knew about it, he did not stop them. Something worthy of mentioning was that the price of the bond of brothers in the Immortal Indulgence had suddenly dropped greatly from 666 copper coins per serving to 333 copper coins per serving. The extent of the price drop was so great that it caused everyone to be astounded. The number of diners heading to the drunken Immortal restaurant suddenly increased. When the rich people saw this, they all complained that Manager Liu did not know how to do business. It was fine if he did not raise the price, but he lowered the price instead. This caused more and more people to come to eat, causing them to have to line up for a long time. As for Yanhuang College, the price of the bean sprouts continued to drop from 300 copper coins to 150 copper coins. This time, the children from poor families did not hesitate anymore. They all ran to the cafeteria to order a serving of bean sprouts for themselves and slowly enjoyed it. South of Chang and City, East Duke's residence. When Shui Junchuo heard that the price of the Brotherhood connection had dropped, he subconsciously felt that something was wrong. With a gloomy face, he asked, "Has the secret recipe started to be tested yesterday?" A servant beside him replied, reporting to Grand Duke, "The secret recipe has been handed over to our restaurant's manager Wang. They have already started to follow the secret recipe yesterday. It is estimated that it will take another 4 to 5 days for the beans to sprout." Shui Junchuo's heart calmed down. He thought for a while and asked, "Where is that Wang Xiaojiang who came yesterday? Is there any news about him?" "Grand Duke, I've sent someone to check Wang Xiaojiang's residence today. There's no one inside. It must be as he said. He fled Chang, and yesterday because he was afraid of the Marquis of Yong, Anne's revenge. Actually, the 6 people who turned themselves in yesterday and were sent out by Li Zishuan to cheat, money had all been hidden. Naturally, the Chui family couldn't find them. Yes, we have to keep an eye on Li Zishuan's movements. Yes, great-grandfather. This group of people will definitely not have a good ending." Li Zishuan is not an easy person to deal with. Chang'an City, Yinshou Square, inside a house. Feng Zhidai stood on the red attic, looking at the houses in the distance, and sneered. "Second young master, it is clearly the Marquis of Yong, and who is in a passive position. Why do you favor him?" The black-faced guard cupped his fists and asked in confusion. Feng Zhidai couldn't help but recall the night when Li Er led the civil and military officials to the cloudy mountain to see the moon, and the first time he met Li Zishuan face to face. After a long silence, he said with a complicated expression, "Amu, never underestimate Li Zishuan. How can a bunch of mayflies shake this big tree? Others may be narrow-minded, but he is a man who has the universe, the sun, the moon, and the stars in his heart." Feng Zhidai added in his heart. Amu scratched his head. He didn't understand why his young master, who was fearless in Lingnan, would immediately cower when he came to Chang'an. "Help me buy some Brothers Link Hearts. Lingnan really can't compare to Chang'an. This is called living. I've even put on some weight recently." Feng Zhidai let out a long sigh and said contentedly, although he was a hostage, he didn't have to worry about food and drink here. As long as he didn't leave Chang, and no one would restrict his freedom. He had good food and wine every day, and he was so happy that he forgot about home. Yes, young master. On the first day of the bean sprouts price reduction, Yinhuang College and Drunken Immortal sold a total of 2,500 jin of bean sprouts. The Li family's remaining soybeans could only produce 7,000 jin of bean sprouts. In other words, it could only support the consumption for 3 days. However, Li Zishuan still didn't have any intention of buying soybeans. But if someone paid attention, they might notice that many farmers had entered the city to buy large amounts of soybeans. On the second day, the price of bean sprouts was slightly reduced again. At Drunken Immortal, it went from 333 copper coins to 300 copper coins. At Yinhuang College, it went from 150 copper coins to 130 copper coins. There is no doubt that the number of customers at Drunken Immortal was even greater. The road from the Drunken Immortal Inn to the entrance of the Western Market was completely packed. Fortunately, Li Zishuan had opened a few branches of the Drunken Immortal Inn in Chang and City. Otherwise, the main branch of the Drunken Immortal Inn would have been overcrowded. On the third day, the price of bean sprouts at Drunken Immortal dropped to 280 copper coins. At Yinhuang College, it went down to 110 copper coins. The once glorious bean sprouts that only the rich could enjoy suddenly became not so unattainable. Ordinary people could still squeeze out enough money to eat a plate of bean sprouts. However, while the commoners were happy, East County Duke Chui Junchuo couldn't be happy. Bastard. This bastard lowered the price of bean sprouts so low. How can the Chui family make money when the bean sprouts are released? When will we be able to recoup the cost of 3,000 copper coins? When Shui Junshuo heard the news, he couldn't help but smash vases and teacups in his residence. Everyone in the Chui family was in danger. Li Zixuan couldn't care less about the Chui family situation. He was leisurely carrying out his plan. On the fourth day, the price of bean sprouts at Drunken Immortal dropped to 200 copper coins. At Yanhuang College, it went down to 100 copper coins. The people of Chang couldn't help but feel happy. In the past, only the imperial family could eat fresh vegetables during winter. Now, they could eat a serving for 200 copper coins. This was too happy. However, on this day, the Li family's bean sprouts were all used up. If Drunken Immortal wanted to sell Brother Connected Heart in the future, they could only buy it from elsewhere or ask shopkeeper Lu to make it himself. When shopkeeper Lu first heard the news, he couldn't help but be anxious. However, Li Zixuan only said one word to him, "Buy." At that time, he really wanted to cry, because where would he go to buy something like that? But on the second day, a miracle happened. "Shopkeeper Lu, I have more than 50 kilograms of bean sprouts. Do you want them? If you do, I can sell them to you at a cheaper price." That morning, when the door of Drunken Immortal opened, a burly man carrying a basket came in. It was Hu Hanyin from the Han family village. Shopkeeper Lu recognized him and was shocked. He said in disbelief, "Old Hu, it's you?" "No. Why do you have so many bean sprouts?" Chapter 10:27. Shi City, Drunken Immortal Restaurant. Shopkeeper Lu, you don't know? I thought you knew. He. Hu Hanyin scratched his head and chuckled at the shocked shopkeeper Lu. Shopkeeper Lu's face darkened. "What do I know? Is there something I should know? Hurry up and tell me." "Old Hu." Shopkeeper Lu was about to ask when a few more villagers came in. Some were from the Han village, some were from Plum village, and some are unfamiliar to him. "Shopkeeper Lu, do you want bean sprouts? I have more than 25 kilograms here. They're fresh. I have 70 kilograms here. Shopkeeper Lu, do you want some?" While listening to the villagers shouting and yelling, Shopkeeper Lu seemed to have understood something. He looked at Old Hu and asked uncertainly, "Old Hu, did young master teach you all the methods of growing bean sprouts?" At this point, it seemed that this was the only reasonable explanation. Old Hu nodded and said yes. "Young master told young madam to teach us the method of growing bean sprouts 4 days ago. After the villagers bought the beans, they didn't go anywhere and just stayed at home to grow bean sprouts. As soon as the bean sprouts grew, we sent them to you. No matter what, we're young master's villagers, so we have to prioritize the needs of Drunken Immortal Restaurant and Yanhuang College." Shopkeeper Lu suddenly understood. No wonder Li Zixuan was so calm when he looked for him yesterday, as if he had a card up his sleeve. Good. This old man was worried about where to buy bean sprouts. "Old Hu, you guys come in. Drunken Immortal Restaurant wants all these bean sprouts." Shopkeeper Lu stroked his beard and laughed. Old Hu and the others picked all the bean sprouts and brought them in. These villagers knew how to repay kindness. They knew that Drunken Immortal Restaurant was the Li family's business, so they only sold the bean sprouts to Shopkeeper Lu for 25 copper coins per kilogram. Shopkeeper Lu felt bad about it and raised the price by 5 copper coins per kilogram. According to their original plan, they only sold the bean sprouts for 20 copper coins per kilogram. "Hey, Old Hu, Marquis really treats us well. Just by selling this batch of bean sprouts, I'll be able to make at least half a year's worth of money." On the cement road back to the Han village, a villager from the Liujia village couldn't help but sigh to Old Hu. "Old Lu, of course, young master treats his family's farmers well. After you've been with young master for a long time, you'll naturally know how good young master is." Old Hu smiled faintly. "Hey, how much do you think the bean sprouts would fetch if they were sold to other restaurants?" Someone in the crowd said this, and the atmosphere suddenly became heavy. Hu Hanyin's expression changed. He stopped his tracks. Seeing that there was no one else around, he said with a sullen face, "A person must have a conscience." Old Hu, had only moved to the Han family manor over 20 years ago. Previously, I had experienced who knows how many main families in other places. But which main family didn't King think about how to suck everyone's blood? I, old who, dare to say that there isn't a main family that treats us as sincerely as young master. You may not know how valuable this method of growing bean sprouts is, but I heard 2 days ago that the Chui family offered 3,000 strings of cash to buy this secret recipe. But what about young master? Young master didn't ask us for a single copper coin and directly taught us this method. Now that we've distributed the bean sprouts, other restaurants may indeed buy them at a higher price. But Marquis treats us like this. Yeah, you want to sell the bean sprouts to others just to earn a few copper coins. Don't you feel guilty? Hu Hanyun, will put the ugly words out here today. If any of these 8 villages dare to sell bean sprouts to other restaurants without permission, old Hu, will be the first to go to their house and break their legs. Whether you report it to the authorities or ask someone to take revenge, I'll accept it. But if this kind of situation happens again in the future, I'll definitely beat you up. Unless the Drunken Immortal House and Yinhuan College get enough bean sprouts, then we can sell them to other restaurants. But the price can't be lower than what we sell to the Drunken Immortal House. Old Hu's words were powerful and resonating. The dozen or so villagers in front of him all became serious after hearing this. Second Master Lu stepped forward and fiercely hammered Old Hu's chest. Then he shouted to the crowd, "What little Hu said is correct. There are some things that young master doesn't care about, and he won't tell us. But since we've received young master's kindness, we can't disappoint young master. Lu Wanshan, will definitely not allow anyone to go back on their word. Right? Lu Meng, will definitely not allow anyone to go back on their word. Marquis brought us to live a good life, so we must repay Marquis. As a person, we can't lose our conscience." Second Master Lu was a well-known figure in the surrounding villages. With him saying this, who would dare to not believe him? As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Meng of the Liujia village quickly stood up and agreed. He sold more than 100 caddies of bean sprouts today and earned more than 2,000 copper coins. After deducting the cost of buying soybeans, his net profit was more than 2 strings of coins. When Li Zishuan encouraged the villagers to build greenhouses, he couldn't afford to build greenhouses. Now, he didn't expect that just selling bean sprouts once would be enough for him to build 3 or 4 greenhouses. Happiness came too quickly. He was planning to first return the 500 copper coins he borrowed from Li Zishuan and then build 2 greenhouses. Next year, he would definitely have enough money to send his children to school. Therefore, he had now become one of Li Zishuan's staunchest supporters. Old Hu and Second Master Lu are right. In the future, our bean sprouts must be sold to the Drunken Immortal House and Yinhuan College first. I agree. This is a must. The rest of the villagers followed behind Lu Meng and voiced their agreement. Second Master Lu nodded his head in satisfaction and said, "Also, all of you, when you go back, keep your mouths shut. Also, keep your wives' mouths shut." Although the young master didn't tell us to keep it a secret, the less people from the other villages know about the bean sprouts, the more money we can earn. If everyone knows about it, the bean sprouts will definitely be sold at a cheaper price. Old Hu agreed and said, "Yes, keep your mouths shut, just like the greenhouses. No matter who comes to the village, don't let them see it. Also, don't mention this to the other villages. If you do, you'll be destroying everyone's rice bowls. That's right. Whoever says it will feel bad for all of us. Yes, we must keep it a secret." Under the mobilization of Old Hu and Second Master Lu's propaganda, the villagers of the 8 villages smoothly formed an alliance of interests and agreed to keep the secret. In Chang and the Drunken Immortal House's brotherhood connection continued to be popular. But today, there was a disruptor. The Chui family's restaurant in the Eastern Market also introduced a dish similar to the brotherhood connection. They directly called it stir-fried bean sprouts. The price was still reasonable, 190 copper coins per serving. It was 10 copper coins cheaper than the Drunken Immortal House's brotherhood connection price yesterday. Why was it yesterday's price? Because today, the Drunken Immortal House's brotherhood connection price was lowered by 10 copper coins. Therefore, the two prices were the same. It wasn't that the Chui family didn't want to lower the price, but the price they paid for the secret recipe was too high. They had to get the original price back first, right? Otherwise, when the bean sprouts were overflowing in the future, the price would be even lower, and the profit margin would be even smaller. Obviously, after experiencing Li Zishuan's indiscriminate bombardment these days, Cui Junchuo had already predicted the future trend of the price of bean sprouts. However, he didn't expect that Li Zishuan would secretly teach the method of making bean sprouts to the farmer. As a result, the price of bean sprouts in Chang and city would fall at an even faster rate. What? There are people selling bean sprouts in the Western market and the Eastern market? In the Eastern Duke's mansion, south of Chang and city. When Cui Junchuo heard the news, his heart sank. At this time, he completely understood that he had been tricked by Li Zishuan. Yes, great-grandpa. They should be villagers outside the city. Each of them had a lot of bean sprouts. The servant of the Cui family bowed and said, "Villagers? How could they know the secret recipe of bean sprouts? Did you find out which village they came from?" Cui Junchuo's face was gloomy. Although the Cui family was rich, they wouldn't ignore such a profitable business like bean sprouts. Moreover, the current situation was very obvious. The Cui family had been cheated by Li Zishuan for a whole 3,000 strings of coins. As a top aristocratic family, how could he tolerate this? "I think I saw a villager from Plum Village. I don't know the rest," the servant replied. Today, shopkeeper Liu had bought more than 2,000 caddies of bean sprouts from villagers. If he bought more, the Drunken Immortal restaurant wouldn't be able to eat it all. Therefore, the remaining villagers were either sent to other restaurants to sell or brought to the Western market and the Eastern market to sell. After the other restaurants bought the bean sprouts, they hurriedly asked their chefs to study the method of making bean sprouts. They planned to join the ranks of selling bean sprouts tomorrow. When the people of Chang and city saw the villagers selling bean sprouts, they would usually buy 2 caddies of bean sprouts so that their wives could try it. If this continued, the number of people eating bean sprouts in the restaurants would decrease greatly. The sales of bean sprouts in the restaurants would definitely not be as prosperous as in the Drunken Immortal restaurant. It could be said that the most popular stage of the bean sprouts business had passed. All that was left was this soup, and the meat in the soup had all been scooped up by Li Zishuan. Bam! Plum Village, Plum Village. Damn it, this brat is so ruthless. He actually resorted to a life and death struggle move. This is so infuriating. Cui Junchuo immediately understood when he heard Plum Village. He slammed the teacup on the table onto the ground and said angrily, "Life and death struggle? No. Grandfather, you might have misunderstood. This is not called a life and death struggle. It should be called a courageous retreat." Yongle Lane, Li Residence West Courtyard. When Yi Guozhong heard that the Hanjiazwang, Plum Village, Lujiazwang, and several other villages had started selling bean sprouts in the east and west cities today, he subconsciously felt that Li Zishuan was using the method of killing 1,000 enemies at the cost of 800 of his own men to take revenge on the Cui family for stealing the secret. In the end, both families would not be able to earn any money if they fought to the death. Therefore, he came to the West Courtyard to ask Li Zishuan what he was thinking. Li Zishuan laughed when he heard that. "What do you mean by a courageous retreat? I think you're just being stubborn. Sigh. You youngsters are so impetuous and easily let your emotions affect your decisions." Yi Guozhong shook his head and sighed. Li Zishuan could only patiently explain, "Grandfather, think about it carefully. Since the first day the Drunken Immortal restaurant started selling bean sprouts, our residence has earned a total of more than 2,000 strings of coins. Together with the 8,000 strings of coins that the Cui family stole from us, it adds up to more than 10,000 strings of coins. The little bean sprouts brought in more than 10,000 strings of coins in less than 10 days. Grandfather, do you really think it's a loss? Previously, I've already said that even if the servants in the residence did not leak the secret recipe, the people outside would definitely be able to figure out the method to grow bean sprouts in 1 or 2 months. At that time, We might not even be able to earn 10,000 strings of coins. Now, not only have we maximized the income of the bean sprouts in the shortest time possible, but we have also cleaned up the disloyal servants in the residence. No matter how you look at it, I don't think I've suffered a loss. Yi Guozhong secretly nodded when he heard that. In the end, he laughed and said, "Ha, you really are a sly fox. Those people in the Chui family provoked you. They're really unlucky." After saying that, he smiled comfortably and turned around to leave. At the gate of the courtyard, Father Li suddenly understood. He patted his chest and quickly left before Yi Guozhong came over. He had also heard the news and wanted to come over to ask his son what he was thinking. However, when he walked to the gate of the courtyard, he found that Yi Guozhong was also there. He stopped and stood at the gate of the courtyard to eavesdrop. Although Yi Guozhong was usually kind to Li Zixuan, that was because of the generational gap effect. Grandfathers usually doted on their grandsons, but for his son-in-law, it was already good enough that he didn't reprimand him. "This stinking brat, he likes to hide things from his old man now, causing this old man to worry for nothing," Li Jingma muttered. Although there was a reprimand in his words, why did his tone sound like he was happy that his son had become more mature? Whether it was a life and death struggle or a courageous retreat, it was just a small business worth a few tens of thousands of strings of cash. Li Zixuan didn't take it to heart. He had always been concerned about how his technology tree was growing. In the afternoon, Li Zixuan left Chang and then went to Chichugu workshop in Mei Village. The first thing he saw was a bustling scene. There were people coming and going in the workshop, and the west side of the courtyard had already been set up. There were many pipes on the ground, and in the middle of the pipes there was a prototype of a furnace. Faubert was gesturing with a group of blacksmiths about something. Li Zixuan stood a distance away and did not disturb them. After a while, Faubert finished talking to the blacksmiths and walked towards Li Zixuan. "Young master, you are here?" "Yes." "Faubert, the progress is not bad. I estimate that in less than a month, the ironworks will be able to start smelting iron, right?" Li Zixuan looked around and said with satisfaction, "Haha, almost there. We have a lot of experienced blacksmiths in our workshop, and the construction of the furnace will only be faster. Now, we just need to see when Xiao Bing will be able to transport the platinum ores back." Chapter 1028. Is there still no news from Xiao Bing? Strange Taste Pavilion's new workshop. Li Zixuan looked at Faubert and asked. Speaking of which, as the owner, he was not responsible at all. A few days ago, after he gave the blueprint of the ironworks to Faubert, he basically did not ask about it anymore. It was not because he was lazy, but because of the sprouts and the spies in Chong, and which took up a lot of his energy. "Young master, that guy sent a message back 2 days ago, saying that he had found the bauxite you wanted in Shuo province. He should be sending a batch back in 2 days." Faubert replied with a smile. He had received the news from Fu Bin and wanted to report it to Li Zixuan, but he had heard about the recent turmoil in Chang'an City, so he gave up the idea. He wanted to wait until Li Zixuan was free to tell him. Li Zixuan was happy to hear that. He was secretly glad that his memory was not wrong, but he felt sorry for his old classmate. He had dug up his family's bauxite more than 1,000 years in advance. Just take it as a continuation of the glory of the Chinese people in the world. Old classmate, the bauxite that your family contributed is very meaningful. Li Zixuan muttered in his heart, and then said to Faubert, "Well, after the bauxite from Shuo province is shipped back, we will start firing the refractory cement that Faubert and I talked about previously. If there are any problems, send someone to call me at any time." The so-called refractory cement could be divided into aluminate cement, low calcium aluminate cement, calcium magnesium aluminate cement, and dolomite refractory cement. At present, the easiest cement to fire was aluminate cement, which was mainly made of bauxite and limestone. It was calcined to produce a clinker with calcium aluminate as the main component and alumina content of about 50%. After that, it was ground into a hydraulic cementitious material, which was called refractory cement. The refractory temperature of refractory cement was generally more than 1,580 degrees Celsius. So in modern society, Refractory cement was often used as the lining of some high-temperature kilns and some high-temperature projects that were eroded by the atmosphere and rain for a long time. Faubert nodded and replied, "No problem." When he had asked Lisa Schwann for the blueprint, Lisa Schwann had already told him the formula and production method of refractory cement. The workshop was no longer the same as before and had accumulated a lot of technology, so Faubert felt that it should not be difficult to fire refractory cement. Lisa Schwann took out 2 blueprints from his arms and handed them to Faubert. He said, "Faubert, I want to make 2 things recently. One is a furnace, and the other is a mold. The structure is not very complicated. You can just ask the craftsman to help me make 2 of them." Faubert took them suspiciously and roughly glanced at them. He roughly understood what Lisa Schwann wanted to make. He couldn't help but ask, "Young master, this furnace is very delicate, especially the ventilation performance of this thing. It's better than the furnaces we use now. But this mold, if you use this mold to make something, won't it be like a hornet's nest with holes everywhere? What do you want to use it for, young master?" Lisa Schwann smiled and said, "Faubert, what do you think of using it to shape coal powder?" The coal mold that he provided to Faubert was the kind of modern handmade honeycomb coal mold that was used for pressing connecting rods. Many children in the city might not have seen this kind of thing before, but Lisa Schwann in his previous life had not only seen it, but also used it. When he was young, his family was poor. His father tried all kinds of ways to earn money in order to provide for him and his sisters to go to school. There was no need to talk about the way to earn money. Other ways included fishing, selling dried fish, helping others build houses, and even going to the streets to sell his art when he was not in the fields. When he was 6 years old, his father bought 2 trucks of raw coal from somewhere. It was the kind of coal that was the size of a football. It was probably just dug out from a coal mine. After that, his family began to rely on making honeycomb coal to earn money. At that time, he was still quite sensible. Every day after school, he would help his parents make honeycomb coal. The children in the countryside were not so delicate. Those handmade honeycomb coal molds were almost as tall as him. But at that time, he also knew that his family was poor. If he did not work, he might not even be able to go to school. So even though his hands were blistered, he continued to work. Later, after making honeycomb coal for 2 years, his family did not continue to do it. Because the efficiency of manual labor was too low, they did not earn much money. But it was also because of that experience that Lisa Schwann was very familiar with the honeycomb coal mold. He could even draw it with his eyes closed. To put it simply, it was a bit similar to a syringe without a needle. Ground coal mixed with yellow mud was stuffed into the mold, compacted, and then pushed out by the piston and dried to form a mold. The only difference was that the piston at the end of the honeycomb coal mold's push rod was very different from the piston of syringe. The piston was made up of 2 parts. One part was about 12 iron pillars of equal diameter and height. The other part was an iron plate with the same number, diameter, and distribution as the iron pillars. The iron plate with holes was embedded in the iron pillars, and the push rod was connected to the iron plate. In this way, when the slime was stuffed into the mold, it would cause the iron plate to move up with the connecting rod. And because of the existence of the circular iron pillars, there would be holes in the slime. Finally, when the connecting rod pushed out the slime in the mold, the honeycomb-shaped coal would be obtained. The principle was very simple. Faubert was considered an expert in engineering. When he heard this, he frowned and thought for a while. Finally, he shook his head and said, "I understand. Young master wants to make the shape of the coal into a honeycomb shape, so that the coal can burn more easily. This is indeed a very good idea. But has young master ever thought that even if the coal is ground into coal powder, there is no adhesion between them? It is very difficult to stick together." Lisa Schwann gave a thumbs up and praised. "Faubert has good eyesight. This coal powder is indeed as you said, there is no adhesion. But we can add something sticky to it to make it stick together. In this way, we can create honeycomb-shaped coal. Together with the stove on the other paper, Faubert, do you think it will be very convenient for us to boil water in the future?" Faubert couldn't help but be startled. He finally understood that the 2 drawings that Lisa Schwann gave him were actually used together. He thought for a while, and after a while, he said with a face full of admiration, "Young master is really a genius. This kind of wonderful idea, even if I were 40 years younger, I am afraid I would not be able to come up with it." Chapter 1029. Actually, if Fubin had not discovered the coal mine in Yifang County, Li Zixuan would not have thought of making honeycomb briquettes. At the very least, he would not have done it in the short term. But now that he had a big coal mine, he could not just take the coal from the coal and not use the coal inside, right? That would be a waste. The coal content in the coal mine was the majority, and the coal that could be directly used for combustion was relatively small. Following the principle that waste was a great crime, Li Zixuan decided to create the modern coal furnace with a furnace and honeycomb briquettes. In the modern era, on October 1st, 1950, Guowindi's Household Industry Society was established to produce the new fuel developed by Guowindi, honeycomb briquettes. In 1956, during the socialist transformation of capitalism, Guowindi's Big Briquettes Processing Industry Society changed from a private operation to a state-owned enterprise. Honeycomb briquettes became popular throughout the country. According to the records of that year, burning normal coal needed to be shaved and added a few times a day. But burning honeycomb briquettes did not need to be lit every day, nor did it need to be heated and shaved. Thus, the annoying phenomenon of black smoke and flying ashes was completely eliminated. A family of 5 or 6 people burned normal coal every month, but burning honeycomb briquettes only required about 200 kilograms, and it also saved the wood used to guide the coal. The result of promoting honeycomb briquettes in the capital in the first half of 1958 was that the city and the suburbs did not have complete statistics. They saved about 7,000 tons of firewood and 70,000 tons of coal. Thus, in terms of saving resources, Li Zixuan felt that it was necessary to make honeycomb briquettes. Although the consumption of mineral resources in this era was far less than in the modern era, it was better to save as much as possible. He had to leave some resources for the future generations, right? Actually, the main reason was that Li Zixuan still missed his parents and family in his previous life. He did not want his family to have no resources after 1,000 years. Li Zixuan planned to use the raw coal from the coal mine to make honeycomb briquettes, and also to use a portion of the coal to make coke. The so-called coking of raw coal refers to the process of heating coking coal to about 1,000 degrees Celsius, high-temperature dry distillation, under isolated air conditions. Through thermal decomposition and coking, it produces coke, coke oven gas, and other coking chemical products. In terms of craftsmanship, it was not difficult. The burnt coal could be used as a reducing agent to smelt iron. Faubert, you must be joking. Since that's the case, I won't delay your work any longer. The furnace and molds aren't that urgent. Let's focus on the ironworks first. Hearing Faubert's praise, Li Zixuan did not feel proud. Instead, he felt a little sad. Perhaps it was because he thought of his parents in his previous life. All right then. Actually, these two things aren't complicated. I'll get someone to make a few for you later. Faubert nodded. Li Zixuan didn't say anything else. He cupped his hands at Faubert and left the western courtyard. Sister Wire, did you encounter any difficulties when you were making the telescope? Yes, of course he did. For example, that idiot little Ning. He's so clumsy every time. He broke a few of my lenses. Ugh, Yamacho, you're here? Li Zixuan originally planned to sit in the workshop's office for a while, but he didn't expect to meet Little Yu and Mo Lingwei in the hall on the first floor. Listening to their conversation, it seemed that there was something else going on. When Mo Lingwei saw him coming, she quickly stopped talking and greeted him. Sir, Little Yu had a booklet on her lap and a pencil in her hand. When she heard Mo Lingwei say that Li Zixuan was coming, she put the booklet on the chair and stood up to greet him. Yes, what are you guys doing? Li Zixuan responded and asked with a smile. Mo Lingwei turned to look at Little Yu and replied, Yamacho, I heard that there was a big movement at the workshop recently. I was curious, so I came to take a look. It's okay if I can't help, but it's even better if I can help. I didn't expect to meet Little Yu so we chatted for a while. Li Zixuan couldn't help but ask, What? The Mahis also have research on iron smelting? He knew that the Mahis were good at building mechanisms, but he didn't know that the Mahis had research on iron smelting. Mo Lingwei said proudly, "Of course, there are many records of iron smelting in the Mahist's ancient books. I even gave a lot of suggestions to improve the blast furnace that Faubert is building now." China had mastered the technology of smelting iron and steel from iron during the Spring and Autumn Warring States period. It was as easy as drinking water for the Mahists. Not only were they good at smelting iron, but the Mahists were also good at forging swords. The Mahist master's personal sword, the Ink Snow Sword, was extremely famous in China's history. So no matter what, it was impossible for the Mahists not to be proficient in the art of smelting iron. Hee. Then I have to thank Ink Girl. Li Zixuan saw that Mo Lingwei was serious, so he smiled and said politely. Mo Lingwei waved her hand and said, "Hee. Yamacho, you don't have to be so polite. Now that I'm a member of the academy, it's only right for me to do something for the workshop." Li Zixuan smiled and looked at Li Yu. Without waiting for him to ask, Li Yu took the initiative and said, "Yamacho, a few days ago, I heard that Sister Wei became a professor at Yanhuang College. I met her today, so I wanted to write about her in the newspaper. It's a good thing for us girls." Just now I was asking Sister Wei about the details of how she made the telescope. Li Zixuan was stunned and thought that little Yu's thinking was quite modern. Wasn't what she was doing now equivalent to the reporters in modern times interviewing famous people and then using the content of the interview as news? This little girl really had the talent to be a reporter. She was self-taught. "Huh, I see." Then you guys continue to chat. "But little you have to be careful when you write the news. The production of the telescope is a secret of the college and the imperial court. Any technical things can't be mentioned in the newspaper. Otherwise, there will be big trouble." Li Zixuan didn't object to little Yu setting Mo Lingwei as a role model for Tang Empire's women. But in terms of principles, he had to make it clear to Li Yu in advance. This was because the technology of the telescope was too important. If it fell into the hands of an enemy country, who knew how much trouble it would bring to Tang Empire. I understand, sir. When the time comes, I'll write the news and show it to you again." Little Yu still knew the importance of the matter. She immediately replied solemnly. "Okay." Li Zixuan nodded and looked at Mo Lingwei and said, "Ink Girl, many of the things you know are related to Tang Empire's interests. So in the future, you have to be careful with your words and actions. Don't casually reveal things that you shouldn't reveal to others." Mo Lingwei stuck out her tongue and said, "I know, Yamacho. I don't usually go out of the college, so I won't reveal any secrets." That's the best. You guys continue chatting. I'll go up first." Chapter 10:30. The next day, the Tang Daily's headline attracted everyone's attention. How did a strong career woman become Professor Mo Lingwei of Yanhuang College? Whoa, since when did Yanhuang College have a female professor? Professor? What's a professor? TSK. Wang Anfu. If you don't go to the Fengyue brothel more often, you won't be like this now. You don't even know about a professor of Yanhuang College. Haha, that's right. This brat usually spends all his energy on prostitutes. Oomph. If you have something to say, just say it. Stop talking nonsense. Tisk. Let me put it this way. Being a professor is the highest honor in the Yanhuang Academy. Those who obtain the title of professor will receive the best treatment in the academy. Needless to say, the generous salary will not be a problem. In addition to the salary, the professors of the academy will also receive an additional courtyard in the Cloud Mountain. That's really impressive. A villa on Mount Yinshan? Whoa, I saw it from afar before. It's really impressive. Speaking of which, being a professor gives you a villa on Mount Yinshan? That's really worth it. Should I give it a try another day? To hell with you. Don't insult the word professor with your ignorant and incompetent behavior. Haha. I just didn't expect that a woman could become a professor of Yanhuang College. That's really surprising. But it makes sense. Look, this girl participated in the construction of the astronomical telescope. It's not an exaggeration to say that she's a professor. Astronomical telescope? Brother Pang, can you tell me what an astronomical telescope is? Astronomical telescope. I heard an old man mention it before. Most of the ordinary people were talking about how generous the treatment of a professor in Yanhuang College was. It was shocking that a woman like Mo Lingwei could become a professor of the college. However, some scholars were unhappy after reading the newspaper. What an insult to the educated! What an insult to the educated! The Marquis of Yong, and is too much. A mere woman actually dares to call herself a professor? How can we, the disciples of the saints, continue to study the world? In the Imperial College of the Imperial College, a Confucian scholar couldn't help but slap the table and stand up angrily after reading the headlines in the newspaper during class. Uncle Huai, are you talking about today's news from the Tang Daily? Another Confucian scholar asked as he stood up. The Confucian scholar named Uncle Huai stood up and said indignantly, "That's right, that's the news. The Marquis of Yong, and is really disgraceful. How can he compare a woman to the disciples of the saints? I'm so pissed off." In fact, his full name was Zheng Huaibua. He was a concubine-born son of the Zheng family of Xinjiang. Although he was born of a concubine-born son, he carried the name of the Zheng family of Xinjiang. No matter where he went, he was like a crane in a flock of chickens. I saw the news just now, too. I'm furious, too. Me, too. The Marquis of Yong, and has really gone overboard this time. Why don't we all go to the Marquis of Yong in manner to demand an explanation? Zheng Huaibua saw that the students in the classroom were all furious. He gritted his teeth and suggested, "Okay, let's go and demand an explanation from the Marquis of Yong, and let the Marquis of Yong and revoke that woman's position as a professor. Yes, it must be revoked. Uncle Huai, if you want to go, I'll go with you." The classroom that was previously noisy suddenly became lively. After a while, a student weakly said, "Uncle Huai, I think we shouldn't go. Last time, the students of our college went to the Marquis of Yong in manner to demand an explanation. In the end, they were almost stripped of their academic status. The leader, Chui Yunhan, was even sent to Cheongzhou." These words woke everyone up from their dream. When these words came out, the few people who were arguing fiercely earlier were all jolted awake. They immediately recalled that a few months ago, when Li Zixuan officially mentioned on a newspaper that the Marquis of Yong and Chui Yunhan brought a group of students to the Marquis of Yong in manner to cause trouble. In the end, they were wiped out in one fell swoop by the Imperial Guards sent by Li Zixuan. After that, Li Zixuan ignored the pleas of the Chui family's old grandfather and actually sent Chui Yunhan to Cheongzhou. This was a real lesson learned from the mistakes of the past. Furthermore, from the previous incident, it could be seen that Li Zixuan's current imperial favor was very high. It wasn't something that ordinary people could shake. Scholars like them, who didn't have any scholarly achievements, were even worse. Chichang's words are reasonable. This matter needs to be discussed at length. We can't just go rashly. After a while, someone betrayed. This was the traditional Confucian students. They advocated a gentleman does not stand under a collapsing wall. Once they discovered that there might be danger ahead, they would usually run faster than anyone else. Yes, Uncle Huai, this matter needs to be discussed at length. Otherwise, the gains won't make up for the losses. Why don't we go find Professor Chui? He has the right to write a letter to advise against it. Let's ask him to help us advise His Majesty on this matter." Zheng Huaibua despised his stupid teammates in his heart. After hearing this sentence, he couldn't help but nod and say, "Okay, Professor Chui is an upright person who abhors evil. Let's go find him together. He definitely won't sit by and do nothing." Speaking of Chui Shanyu, this fellow is actually quite miserable. Previously, he had joined forces with the 7 great professors of the Imperial College to impeach Li Zixuan. Although he had forced Li Zixuan out of the Imperial College in the end, he didn't get any good results. Not only did he fail to run for the position of the Imperial College's secretary, but he was also called by Li Er in the Imperial Edict as a teacher who only knew how to fight for power and profit. As a result, his political career in the Imperial College had basically come to an end. In the following period of time, Cui Shanyu kept a low profile. It was likely that he didn't expect that while he was peacefully sitting at home, someone would deliver the opportunity for revenge to him. Wow, this ink girl is so amazing. Despite being a girl, she can actually achieve her current status. She is truly too amazing. The scholars were indignant that M.O. Lingwei had ridden on their heads. The women of Chang were looking up to M.O. Lingwei's glorious achievements and sighing that a woman could actually not lose to a man. Within the Changle Palace, after Princess Changle saw the news in the newspaper, she let out a similar sigh. According to Brother Qingke, the ink girl is from the M.O. family and is proficient in arithmetic and construction. It is only natural that she can achieve such accomplishments. If only Changle had the same intelligence as the ink girl. Sitting alone by the window, Changle gazed at the ginkgo leaves drifting in the wind. She couldn't help but sigh. Everyone envies me, the princess of the great Tang, but they don't know that I envy the ink girl, a free person who can do what she likes and pursue her true love. Chapter 1031. Wow, Hanli, is this M.O. Lingwei a professor at your college? South of Chang, in city, and Lu House, Lin family's backyard. Today was Yin Wang College's Saturday, so Iron Egg came to tutor Lin Hao. After Han Lijing went to Hudong Road, Iron Egg couldn't live alone in the Han village, so he was now living in Chang in City's mansion. Although his sister, Han Yushi, reprimanded him for the results of the monthly test, he still came to the Lin family to fulfill his promise. Lin Hao took the opportunity to read today's Tang Daily while he was squatting in the latrine. His eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets when he saw what it was. He quickly wiped his butt and limped out of the latrine. Then he walked to Iron Egg's side, widened his eyes, pointed at the newspaper, and exclaimed. Iron Egg frowned and said unhappily, "She's a professor at our college. Young Master Lin, please don't call her by her name." Respect for teachers was a rule that every student of Yinhuang College must abide by. Ahem, sorry. Lin Hao coughed and touched his nose embarrassedly. He then said, "What I mean is, why is there a female professor at Yinhuang College?" Iron Egg's expression relaxed. He replied, "My master said that Yinhuang College is a place to educate people, develop their wisdom, and promote engineering. Here, it's all about talent. As long as one is talented and capable, no matter if he or she is male or female, old or young, he or she will be put in an important position." Professor Mo used her talent and knowledge to do hundreds of experiments in the workshop over the past few months. Finally, she created a telescope that can break through the limit of ordinary people's vision, so that even ordinary people can observe the stars in the sky. With such talent and achievements, my master said that she is worthy of being a professor. Lin Hao couldn't help but give a thumbs up. He praised, "This Professor Mo is really a heroine. It's hard to imagine that your college's telescope was made by her." Tai Dan chuckled and said, "The Flame Yellow Academy is a place of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. There are many capable teachers and students here. Wait until you enter the academy in the future and you'll truly experience it." Lin Hao said with anticipation, "Don't worry, I will definitely get in next year. But your master is really a bold man. He actually dared to appoint a woman as a professor in the college. Isn't he afraid that other scholars will be dissatisfied?" Hee hee. Iron Egg frowned. Yinhuang College was founded by my master. He can appoint whoever he wants to be a professor. Professor M.O., is it a matter? Lin Hao chuckled and said non-committally, "Haha, maybe." Lisa Xuan didn't care about what other people were saying about the Datang Daily headline. As long as the content of the news wasn't confidential, other people could say whatever they wanted. In the afternoon, he received news that the first batch of bauxite that Fu Bin had brought back from Shuazhou had arrived at the workshop. It was earlier than Lisa Xuan and Faubert had expected. Since he had nothing to do, Lisa Xuan went to the new workshop of the Chitu Pavilion to confirm whether Fu Bin was digging bauxite or not. "Young master, look, these are all here." Faubert pointed to a pile of gray, stone-like ores in the front yard of the workshop and said, "Take a look and see if these are the bauxite ores you want." Lisa Schwann went forward and picked up a piece. He looked at it carefully for a while and finally nodded. "Yes, Faubert, this is the bauxite ores that I want." Faubert was relieved when he heard this. He let out a sigh of relief and laughed. "I heard from Xiao Bing that the local miners thought that he had lost his mind. If he was a normal person, why would he pay someone to dig up these seemingly useless stones?" The bauxite that Fu Bin was digging was mainly bauxite. The main component of bauxite was alumina, which was hydrated alumina with impurities. It was a type of earthy mineral that was usually white or gray in color. It didn't look any different from ordinary stones, but the texture was very different when you held it in your hand. Bauxite was very soft, and its hardness was only 1 to 3. Ordinary stones, on the other hand, had a hardness of 5 to 6. The difference was still very big. It wasn't until the end of the Qing Dynasty and the beginning of the Republic of China that someone discovered the technology to extract aluminum from bauxite. Not everyone would be able to discover good things. Faubert, follow the method that I told you before and make a batch of refractory cement." Lisa Schwann said with a smile. These were all things that had been agreed upon before, and they had already been prepared. Uncle Fu naturally agreed. Lisa Schwann saw that there was nothing else for him to do here, so he returned to Chang'an. Recently, he had been returning to his home in Chang, and every weekend. In the evening, Pang Feiji found Lisa Schwann and cupped his fist. "Marquis, someone from the palace said that the emperor wants you to attend the morning court session tomorrow." Morning court session? Lisa Schwann was puzzled. Why is he asking me to attend the morning court session so suddenly? Is there anything important that is related to me in the court session? Pang Feiji scratched his head and said, "Marquis, I don't know." "All right, you can go now." Lisa Schwann had only asked subconsciously. He didn't expect Pang Feiji to answer. After all, with Pang Feiji's connections, he might be able to get some information, but in the imperial court, he was far from being able to do so. "I'll take my leave." After Pang Feiji left, Lisa Schwann thought for a long time, but could not come up with anything. He could only eat and rest early, feeling a little depressed. Early the next morning, he rode on Big White and led Pang Feiji and a group of guards to the palace. Outside Tai Chi Palace, he chatted with Cheng Yao Jin and the others for a while. Then, he realized that there was a familiar yet unfamiliar person in the crowd. He walked up to take a look and smiled. "Oh, isn't this Professor Cui? Why are you here today?" Cui Shanyu knew that he was no match for Lisa Schwann when it came to insulting others. He snorted and said, "The emperor summoned me, so I had no choice but to come." Lisa Schwann thought about it. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? Perhaps the reason why he was summoned by Li Er today had something to do with this guy. Not to mention what the old man was up to behind his back. Just the fact that he couldn't sleep in this morning was enough to make Lisa Schwann feel very displeased. Thus, Lisa Schwann did not show it on his face. He turned around and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Professor Cui, I advise you to be kind. Otherwise, you will learn from Cui Shanfu's mistakes." "You." Cui Shanyo's expression changed drastically. He turned around and wanted to scold Lisa Schwann, but Lisa Schwann had already walked back to the group of generals. He could not make it in time. "Go to court. All officials, go to court for an audience." At this moment, a eunuch at the top of the stairs shouted in a high-pitched voice. The officials immediately quieted down and lined up. They carried the imperial edict and walked up the stairs toward Tai Chi Palace. Chapter 1032. Cui Shanyu, are you the one who impeached the Marquis of Yong, and for insulting the teachings of the saints and misleading the students? Inside the Taiji Palace. Halfway through the morning assembly, Li Er suddenly called out Cui Shanyo's name and asked. Cui Shanyu was still thinking about the words Lisa Schwann said outside the Taiji Palace to persuade him to be kind. When he heard Li Er call out to him, he was startled at first, then quickly went forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, it's not that I want to impeach but that I represent the thousands of disciples of the saints to seek an explanation from the Marquis of Yong'an. Li Zishuan, who was resting on the coiling dragon pillar in the main hall, was shocked at this moment. It was finally his turn to go on stage. As expected, Lier said, "Marquis of Yong'an, come forward. Professor Chui wants to seek an explanation from you." "Yes, Your Majesty," Li Zishuan responded and walked in front of Chui Shanyu. He asked with a smile, "Professor Chui, I wonder what kind of explanation you want from me?" "Oh no, it should be the thousands of disciples of the saints that you speak of. What kind of explanation do you want from me?" Chui Shanyu swallowed his saliva and mustered his courage. "The saints have taught us that the heavenly sovereign is inferior to the earth. The universe is fixed. The inferiority is superior to the inferiority. The position of nobility and inferiority is determined. The way of heaven becomes a man. The way of earth becomes a woman. The universe knows the beginning. The Kuan creates things. But today, the Marquis of Yong and allows a woman to steal a professor of Yanwang College. Isn't this an insult to the teachings of the saints, a disgrace to the culture, and misleading the students? The heavenly sovereign is inferior to the earth. The universe is fixed. From the Book of Changes, Li Zishuan frowned, because he was not used to Chui Shanyu's previous words. Fortunately, he inherited the memories of 2 lifetimes. After pondering for a while, he finally understood that this old fellow wanted to use the mouth of Confucius to convey the idea of men being superior to women. "You are indeed like your mother playing me?" After hearing so much classical Chinese, Li Zishuan subconsciously wanted to recite a sentence of his own, but Chui Shanyu was dumbfounded when he heard it. Li Zishuan realized that something was wrong and quickly changed his words. "Yanhuang College has always chosen people based on their ability. If Professor Chui is not satisfied with my appointment, you can compete with Ink Girl and Knowledge. Why should we bring this small matter to the court and delay His Majesty and the other officials from dealing with the world's affairs?" In fact, when he said, "You are indeed like your mother's play," he forcefully translated the modern, "Are you *king kidding me?" into the classical version. It was normal for Chui Shanyu to be confused after hearing it. When Chui Shanyu heard that Li Zishuan wanted him to compete with Mo Lingwei, his face couldn't help but turn black. He said, "Ridiculous. This old man is a doctor of the Imperial College. How can I compete with a woman? Marquis Yong, and don't try to change the topic. As a woman, Mo Lingwei shouldn't be a professor at Yanwang College. What you're doing now, not only will I not agree, the millions of disciples in the world will not agree. No one would cheer for you if you won, but if you lost, people would say that you bullied a woman." Chui Shanyu knew this very well, so he wouldn't accept it even if he was beaten to death. There was a buzz of discussion in the civil officials' camp. Li Zishuan sneered. "In the end, Professor Chui, are you looking down on women? Then let me ask you, do you have a mother? Meaning, do you have a mother?" He was addicted to talking nonsense today, and some disgraceful words came out of his mouth. This time, Chui Shanyu understood. He said angrily, "Of course I do. Marquis Yong, and please show some respect." Li Zishuan pursed his lips and said, "Respect? Was I disrespectful? You, on the other hand, were disrespectful to your mother." Chui Shanyu was stunned, and then his expression changed. "When have I ever been disrespectful to my mother?" The ancient times emphasized filial piety. If he was labeled as unfilial, he would really be cursed by tens of thousands of people. Chui Shanyu was not willing to take the blame. Li Zishuan replied, Professor Chui, you said so much just now. Didn't you want to tell me that men should be superior to women in this world? Isn't your mother a woman? You know the teachings of the saints better than me. If I remember correctly, the saints once said, a gentleman upholds the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are born from the Tao. A filial brother is the foundation of benevolence. Professor Chui, you just said that men are superior to women. Aren't you looking down on your mother? Are you also insulting the saints' knowledge? You can't even meet the basic requirements of the saints. What right do you have to criticize me? The principles of a gentleman come from the Analects of Confucius. The meaning of the whole sentence is, a gentleman focuses on the fundamental matters. Once the foundation is established, the principles of governing the country will be established. Filial piety to parents, respect to brothers. This is the foundation of being a man. Cui Shanyo's face turned pale. He knew that Li Zixuan was digging a hole for him again, but he couldn't find a strong argument to refute Li Zixuan in a short time. This was because he was at a disadvantage in terms of mental strength. In terms of mental agility, 10 of him couldn't compare to Li Zixuan, who had a strong mental strength. In the civil officials' camp, the officials who were whispering before couldn't help but frown after hearing Li Zixuan's argument. Fang Xinling secretly nodded. In this hall, he was one of the few officials who agreed with the idea of equality between men and women, because he and his wife were true love. Sophistry. Sophistry. Marquis Yeoman, don't slander me. I never said anything about men being superior to women. Cui Shanyu felt the burning pain on his face, but he still defended himself. Huh, you shouldn't admit it. Professor Cui, you're only this promising. Li Zixuan looked at Cui Shanyu with disdain and said, Anyway, Yanwang College teaches engineering. It's a matter of course to appoint all the excellent engineers to teach students. This is also an internal matter of Yanwang College. Professor Cui, as an outsider, you don't seem to have the right to interfere, right? That's right. Little Xian is the Yamacho of Yanwang College. Does he need to ask you for permission to appoint a professor? Cui Shanyu, I'm afraid you're interfering too much. Cheng Yaojin couldn't help but step forward and interrupt. The reason why the old man kept silent today was because he felt that with Li Zixuan's current fighting power, fighting Cui Shanyu would be a piece of cake. Now that he spoke up, he was just beating a drowning dog. Sophistry. Marquis Yeoman, you're insulting. Enough. Everyone shut up. Cui Shanyu wanted to refute again, but Li Zixuan, who was sitting at the head of the table, was getting impatient. Today's matter was already very clear. Li Zixuan appointing Mo Lingwei as a professor was indeed inappropriate, but the Confucian defenders led by Cui Shanyu found it difficult to argue against Li Zixuan. The other civil officials were also unwilling to jump out and join the battle. After all, no one would be able to accept being called, "You have a mother." Mo Lingwei is a key figure in the construction of the astronomical telescope. Although she is a woman, her talent is enough to be a professor. Moreover, as far as I know, she's only in charge of experiments and not teaching. There's no such thing as misleading students. Li Er paused for a moment, then made the final decision. Chapter 1033. Moreover, we have also heard that the Marquis of Yong and had appointed Mo Lingwei as a professor. This matter will end here. In Taiji Palace, Li Er had completely settled the matter of Mo Lingwei becoming a professor of the academy. He then turned to Cui Shanyu and sternly said, Cui Shanyu, I see that you are quite proficient in Confucian classics. Staying in the Imperial College will be a waste of your talent. Therefore, I have decided to transfer you to the Hongwen Library as a scholar. You will be in charge of writing history. Are you willing? Cui Shanyu's heart instantly sank. He anxiously said, Your Majesty, this subject's life goal is to pass on the Tao and cultivate talents for the great Tang. This subject still wants to teach students in the Imperial College for a few more years. Your Majesty, please grant my wish. He was no fool. Although becoming a scholar in the Hongwen Library was the same rank as his current Imperial College professor, going to the Hongwen Library to write history was basically an idle job. He understood that Li Er found him annoying and wanted to chase him away. Li Er's eyes instantly turned cold. The temperature in the hall seemed to have turned cold as well. Cui Shanyu inexplicably shivered, regretting his rashness. Make the best use of people and materials. Ever since we ascended the throne, we have always used people based on their abilities. Beloved official Cui, you have a belly full of wisdom. Do you think that we have made an improper arrangement for you to write history? Li Er's cold voice traveled into Cui Shanyu's ears, causing him to shiver once more. Your Majesty, this subject, don't speak. Let beloved official Kong speak. Cui Shanyu still wanted to save himself, but Li Er didn't give him a chance to speak. He turned to Kong Ingda and said, "Beloved official Kong, beloved official Chui has served in the Imperial College for so many years. You must understand his abilities the best. Tell me, is beloved official Chui suitable to write history in the Hongwen Library?" When Kong Ingda heard Lier call him, he couldn't help but frown. Chui Shanyu immediately looked over, praying that Kong Ingda would let him off the hook. But reality was merciless. After a few moments of silence, Kong Ingda clasped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, Academician Chui is familiar with the classics and history. He is indeed suitable to write history in the Hongwen Library." Actually, not only was Lier fed up with Chui Shanyu, Kong Ingda had long been fed up with him as well. Yesterday afternoon, Chui Shanyu had submitted a petition to impeach Li Zixuan, but Kong Ingda did not know about it. Kong Ingda didn't support Mo Lingwei's appointment as a professor in Yanhuan College, but he wouldn't oppose it either. Although Lier was the dean of Yanhuan College on the surface, everyone knew that it was only in name. Li Zixuan was the real master of Yanhuan College. Kong Ingda understood that Li Zixuan had appointed a professor to his academy. Even if he objected, he had no right to do so. Besides, Kong Ingda had always felt guilty towards Li Zixuan. He felt that if Li Zixuan had stayed at the Imperial College, the college would have become more and more glorious. The reason Li Zixuan had left the Imperial College was because Chui Shanyu had contacted others to secretly impeach him. Now a similar thing had happened again. Kong Ingda was really disappointed in Chui Shanyu. He might as well follow Lier's wishes and send him to the Hongwen Library. Chui Shanyu's heart finally turned cold when he heard this. At this moment, his mind inexplicably echoed what Li Zixuan had said before the morning assembly. "Professor Chui, I advise you to be kind. Otherwise, you will learn from Chui Shanfu's mistakes." What was karma? This was called retribution in this lifetime. In less than an hour's time, Li Zixuan's seemingly careless words had actually become reality. Chui Shanyu really hated Zheng Huaibua and the other scholars who had urged him to impeach Li Zixuan. Minister Chui, are you willing to go to the Hongwen Library to study history now?" Lier nodded with satisfaction. If he could send Chui Shanfu to Lingnan, what could Chui Shanyu do? In any case, Lier would definitely support the new study of engineering. If he did not take advantage of his strong control over the Tang Empire to let engineering take root, when his descendants ascended to the throne, engineering would be instantly strangled by Chui Shanyu and the other Confucian defenders. After this year of witnessing the power of engineering, Lier believed that if the Tang Empire wanted to last forever, it could not be separated from engineering. "This subject is willing. Thank you, Your Majesty." Chui Shanyu sighed as if he had accepted his fate. He bowed towards Lier. At this point, he knew that there was no use in struggling. At this moment, he seemed to have aged a few years, but his heart was even older. The rest of the ministers did not come forward to intercede for Chui Shanyu, including Wei Zheng, who had always liked to nitpick. First, Lier's appointment was righteous, and no one could find fault with it. Second, Wei Zheng and his wife's situation was similar to Feng Xianling and his wife's. He was also a person who respected and loved his wife. Chui Shanyu's previous remarks about men being superior to women made him feel a little uncomfortable. Official Chui is a righteous person and has worked hard for the country. He is truly a role model for all the officials. I will reward him with 10 bolts of brocade and 100,000 yuan. Li Zixuan thought to himself, "At least you know what's good for you." But on the surface, he looked like a wise ruler, treating his subjects kindly. Li Zixuan, who was standing below, curled his lips. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Chui Shanyu stepped forward and bowed again. Then please report if you have any matters to discuss. If not, the court is dismissed." Lier nodded and looked at the officials below. None of the officials spoke. Today, they had seen Li Zixuan's current favor. They could not help but sigh at Chui Shanyu's overestimation of his abilities. Just based on Li Zixuan's position in Lier's heart, as long as it was not a crime of treason, no one could overthrow him. Court is dismissed. Lier stood up and waved his hand. This Marquis of Yong and is truly different. Who would have thought that a 7-foot-tall man like him would speak up for a woman? Although some of his words were a little crude, they were not without reason. Haha. In the imperial harem, Empress Zhang's son was chatting with concubine Yang and concubine Yin. The topic of their conversation was the scene that happened in the court earlier. Concubine Yang, who usually did not smile, revealed a rare smile upon hearing this. Isn't that so? Since ancient times, scholars have always said that only women and villains are difficult to deal with. But today, this great scholar, the Marquis of Yong, is actually speaking up for us women. How interesting. Concubine Yin pursed her lips and smiled faintly. Looking at the actions of the Marquis of Yong, and in this year, it does not seem like something those pedantic scholars would do, especially his wedding at the end of June. Even now, many people were still talking about it. If you ask me, that girl from the Han family is also very fortunate to have married someone of her own. Who knows how many girls in Chang and city are envious? Li Zixuan, who had just left the palace, was completely unaware that a small morning court session had turned him into the legendary friend of women. His position in the hearts of women had instantly risen by several levels. Chapter 1034. Xiao Xian, you are indeed like your mother. What do you mean by that? After leaving the imperial city, Cheng Yaojin suddenly patted Li Zixuan's shoulder and asked. Li Zixuan was stunned. After a while, he said helplessly, Ahem, Uncle Cheng, that was just a joke. It doesn't mean anything. Cheng Yaojin glared at him and said unyieldingly, Hey, don't try to play dumb with me. Although I don't know much about literature, I know that this sentence is definitely not as simple as what you said. Li Zixuan almost vomited blood. Uncle Cheng, why do you have to ask this? He did not like to swear in front of his elders. Cheng Yaojin chuckled and said, I just think that this sentence is quite easy to say. What's wrong with asking? Easy to say. If this old fellow learned it, he might even greet everyone he met with. You're just like your mother playing tricks on me. TSK, TSK. That would be a beautiful scene. Ahem. Uncle Cheng, do you really want to hear it? Li Zixuan looked around and asked when he saw that there was no one around. Hey, of course. If you don't want to hear it, why would I waste so much effort to ask you? Actually, the meaning of this sentence is, are you King kidding me? After Li Zixuan said that, he quickly slipped away. But Cheng Yaojin was stunned on the spot. Chonyo, come here. After returning home, Cheng Yaojin waved at Cheng Chumo in the front yard. Cheng Chumo ran over and asked, Dad, you called for me? Cheng Yaojin made a sound of agreement. He clasped his hands behind his back and looked up at the sky with a profound expression. Just when Cheng Chumo thought that his old man was going to instill some principles of life into him, Cheng Yaojin finally turned his eyes to him and said, You really are like your mother playing me? Jie? Cheng Chumo's face and heart were immediately in a state of confusion. Firstly, it was the first time he had seen his old man speak so eloquently. Secondly, he didn't understand what Cheng Chumo meant at all. Sometimes, being uncultured was really scary. You stinking brat, you've wasted your time in the academy. You can't even understand a single sentence. In the future, you're not allowed to go out and fool around during the holidays. Stay at home and study hard. Do you hear me? Cheng Yaojin slapped Cheng Chumo's head in exasperation. With a straight face, he ordered Cheng Chumo to go back to his room. Oh! Cheng Chumo rubbed the back of his head gloomily and replied, Sir, I'm sorry about yesterday's news. In the afternoon, Liu arrived at the Li mansion. After finding Li Zixuan, she immediately apologized. Li Zixuan was stunned. Little Yuer, what's wrong with the news? Why are you apologizing to me for no reason? Little Yuer looked up and said, Sir, I heard that someone is impeaching you in front of His Majesty because of yesterday's news. This is all my fault if not for. Li Zixuan suddenly understood. He waved his hand and interrupted. So that's what happened. Little you don't have to blame yourself. What you did was right. Besides, aren't I fine now? But no buts. I agreed to let you publish that news. And regardless of whether that news is true or not, the news of Ink Girl being appointed as a professor at the academy will spread sooner or later. When the time comes, those who should come will come. After all, some people are willing to be cheap and look for trouble. You can't stop them. Lisa Schwann said half-jokingly. In fact, when he asked little Yuer to publish the news of Mo Lingwei being appointed as a professor, he had a deeper intention. That was to show that Mo Lingwei was treated well and widely respected for making telescopes. This was to stimulate people's enthusiasm for science in this era. This was to create momentum for public opinion. In his previous life, although the era he lived in was technologically advanced, there were still some unsatisfactory aspects. The one that left the deepest impression on him was when a teacher asked a student when he was young, "Student XX, what is your dream?" Under normal circumstances, the student would answer, "Teacher, I want to be a scientist when I grow up." Or, "I want to be a soldier when I grow up and protect my country." But what would happen when he went to university? "Little kid, what is your dream?" "Uncle, I want to be a celebrity when I grow up." Or, "Uncle, I want to be an internet celebrity when I grow up." Now that Li Zishuan had transmigrated to the Tang Dynasty, he didn't want the Tang Dynasty to develop like that in the future. He felt that his Detang daily needed to use public opinion to stimulate the enthusiasm of the people to advocate science and technology. He wanted everyone to feel that scientists like Mo Lingwei were honorable and worthy of respect. Perhaps his power was just a drop in the bucket and couldn't really affect the overall situation, but some things were better done than not done. Some things needed someone to take the lead. Hearing the second half of Li Zishuan's words, little Fishy couldn't help but laugh. She said, "Sir, if Professor Chui heard this, wouldn't he be furious?" Hee. Li Zishuan shrugged and said nonchalantly, "What does it have to do with me whether he's angry or not? Little Fishy, in the future, Detang Daily has to write more of this kind of news. We had to let the people know how great our Yanwang College is. Moreover, the teachers of the college have always been contributing their wisdom to the Tang Dynasty. They are worthy of everyone's respect." Little Fishy nodded vigorously and said with anticipation, "Yes, yes. Sir, don't worry, I will." Actually, little Fishy really wants to become someone as amazing as Sister Mo, but I can't understand the principles and formulas that Sister Mo talks about. I know that I'm still far from Sister Mo. However, it should be a very interesting thing to let more people worship people like Sister Mo. Little Fishy is willing to do it. Li Zishuan shook his head and laughed. "Little Fishy, what Ink Girl did is indeed great, but what you're doing now isn't bad either. You can use the pen in your hand to create a spiritual idol for the people." Little Fishy asked doubtfully, "Sir, what's a spiritual idol?" Li Zishuan thought for a moment and said, "It's someone who can inspire you, encourage you, and let you find your way when you're lost. They can all be called spiritual idols. For example, the Ink Girl that you worship, Little Fishy, can be considered your spiritual idol." "Oh, I understand now. Thank you for your guidance, sir." Little Fishy smiled and thanked Li Zishuan. Then, as if she suddenly thought of something, she said, "Oh, by the way, sir, thank you for speaking up for Sister Mo in the Imperial Court. Perhaps you don't know, but now all the women in Chang and are saying good things about you." Hee. "I'll take my leave first." Little Fishy playfully stuck out her tongue, then bid farewell and left, leaving behind a black-faced Li Zishuan. Chapter 1035. Chui Shanyu was entrusted with an important task by Li Er and was sent to the Hongwen Library to revise history. The group of supervisors at the Imperial College did not dare to cause any more trouble. For this reason, the Zheng clan of Xingyang even sent someone to warn Zheng Huaibua to behave himself. Not only did Li Zishuan have the emperor's heart, but the power that was related to him was also deeply rooted. It was almost equivalent to half of the entire Tang Empire's military power. Most importantly, Li Zishuan might be hiding something extremely terrifying in his hands. Back then, the 7 cultivators sect of Snake Spirit Mountain was destroyed in a single night. The aristocratic families still remembered this in their hearts. The Zheng clan was not willing to provoke Li Zishuan. It was not that the Zheng clan was afraid, but that they did not have any deep grudges with Li Zishuan. It was not worth it to fight to the death with him. Aristocratic families were all profit-oriented. The days suddenly became leisurely. For several days, no one came to disturb Li Zishuan. As the end of the year approached, the weather became colder. Although it was not snowing yet, Chang was located in the north of China. Once winter came, the north wind would often howl. The wind was like a knife to the face. Recently, Li Zishuan had been wondering if he should let the students of the academy have their winter break in advance. After all, the weather was indeed a little cold. The cold weather made Lan'er, who usually liked to go out and play, unwilling to go out anymore. The little girl stayed at home all day, wrapped in a thick fox fur coat and wearing cotton clothes inside. Her chubby appearance made her look even cuter. Take note, cotton clothes were not cotton clothes. Although there was cotton in the Tang Dynasty, it was only used as an ornamental flower. At this time, it was not used to make cotton clothes. The so-called cotton robes were made from extremely high-grade silk. This type of silk was also known as bai. It was mainly used to make cotton robes. In the Book of Songs, the saying, "Chiyue has no clothes, so he robes with his son," referred to this type of robe. This kind of robe made of silk had excellent insulation properties. Of course, it was also quite expensive to make. Only wealthy families could afford it. However, for the poor, wearing a robe with a bai on it was a luxury. Basically, they would wear a bai robe. The so-called bai robe was a robe filled with a type of low-grade silk, and its ability to resist the cold was extremely poor. Even when some famous people were not successful, they would cause a lot of trouble because of this. For example, the famous Sun Zi of the Warring States period, when he was not successful, he wore this robe. When he rolled up his sleeves in the middle of winter, his elbows would be exposed. Of course, in addition to silk materials, animal fur clothes were also necessary to keep out the cold. However, high-grade fur clothes were basically the patent of the rich and nobles. Of course, the common people could not count on them. It was conceivable that winter was a difficult season for most people in an era without cotton. Just listen to the great poet Du Fu's poem and you'll know. The cloth quilt has been cold as iron for many years, and the proud child is evil. Even the blankets were as cold as iron. Was this the Du Fu family in late autumn? What was the colder winter like? Just thinking about it made one shiver. Therefore, Li Zishuan could not help but sigh recently. Who knows how many poor people would freeze to death in an ordinary winter? Brother, look at how cold it is. Hurry up and think of something. Lan'er clung to Li Zishuan and said pitifully. It was cold outside, but it was also cold inside the house. Although there was a charcoal brazier at home, she did not know why her brother went crazy and said that the charcoal brazier had to be ventilated at home. But this way, it would really be ice and fire. The front would be hot from the fire, and the back would be cold from the cold wind. At this time, she began to envy Li Zishuan. Although it was cold outside, Li Zishuan had internal energy and only wore a few layers of clothes. However, his big hands were always so warm. Therefore, whenever Lan'er saw Li Zishuan at home, she always liked to put her hands in Li Zishuan's palms to warm them up. "Huh, you little girl. Hot summer and cold winter is a natural cycle. How can your brother change the weather for you?" After hearing the little cutie's cute request, Li Zishuan was a little amused. Lan'er blinked and said cheekily, "Hee hee, brother can't change the weather, but there must be other ways. Brother is the best." "Huh, you little girl, you call it cold when there's a charcoal brazier? Why don't you go out and see? Is there anyone in the Li family outside who can afford charcoal?" Mrs. Li said to her daughter in a bad mood. Lan'er pursed her lips and did not say anything. Li Zishuan said happily, "If you want to talk about that, it's not like there's no way. Young master, Faubert sent someone to deliver a furnace and a batch of strange-looking charcoal balls. He said that he wants you to try it." An idea popped up in Li Zishuan's mind. Bao suddenly came in and bowed. "Oh, you came at the right time. Where are the things? Quickly bring them in." Li Zishuan's face lit up with joy as he said loudly. Ever since the last batch of bauxite, Fu Bin sent people to deliver a few more batches of iron, ore, sulfur, ore, and coal. The furnace in the workshop was almost completed recently, so Faubert started to study how to make honeycomb briquettes. As for the furnace used to burn honeycomb briquettes, the structure was too simple. Faubert directly asked his trusted craftsman to build it. Li Zishuan gave Faubert a very detailed method of making honeycomb briquettes. It only took 2 to 3 days for the first batch of honeycomb briquettes to be ready. How could Li Zishuan not be happy when he thought that he had brought a very practical modern item to the Tang Dynasty? "Young master, it's all in the yard. I'll bring it in for you now." Seeing that his young master was happy, San Bao was naturally happy as well. He smiled and replied. The rest of the family did not understand why Li Zishuan was suddenly so happy. Old Lady Yi smiled and asked, "Xiao Xian, isn't this just a furnace? Do you have to be so happy?" "Hee, Grandma, this is not an ordinary furnace. You'll know in a while." Li Zishuan smiled and kept them in suspense. After a while, San Bao and Ah Fu worked together to move the furnace and honeycomb briquettes into the yard. Li Zishuan went forward to take a closer look. A familiar feeling instantly rushed to his heart. This was because from the appearance, this furnace and honeycomb briquettes were very similar to the ones he used at home in his previous life. "Brother, can this thing warm me up?" Lana looked at the furnace that was almost as tall as her and asked crisply. Li Zishuan rubbed her little head and smiled knowingly. Lan, you guessed right, but there's no reward, haha. After that, he did not care about the little girl's coquettishness and went forward to personally pick up the fire tongs. This was something that existed before the Three Kingdoms. He clamped a piece of honeycomb briquettes to death and put it into the charcoal basin. Then, he lifted his head and said to Old Lady Yi, "Grandma, this thing is made of briquettes. I call it honeycomb briquettes. You'll know the magic of this thing in a while." Chapter 10:36. The black and heavy honeycomb briquettes were set up in the blazing charcoal fire. The originally very warm charcoal basin suddenly became not so warm after some of the sparks were blocked. "Xian, we don't lack charcoal at home. Why did you bring so many briquettes over? It's very difficult to burn them." Li Jingma frowned. Although the briquettes that Li Zishuan picked up were a little different in shape, coal was still coal. In Li Jingma's opinion, no matter what shape it would not be as easy to burn as charcoal. Li Zishuan smiled and said, "Father, it's true that our family can afford to burn charcoal, but most of the commoners' families can't. Your son is doing good deeds. Moreover, this honeycomb briquettes are not only used to heat the fire. Just watch." Li Jingma saw that his son was going to be stubborn to the end. He shook his head and stopped trying to dissuade him. However, Madame Li was very attentive. She asked softly, "Xin, your honeycomb briquettes and stove are specially designed for the poor commoners? If that's the case, Mother supports you. Who knows how many commoners freeze to death in Chong in every year. You're doing a great deed." Women generally believed in karma. Moreover, ever since Li Zishuan was saved by spiritual master Ling Shu, Madame Li had become a loyal Taoist believer. At the end of every month, she would go to the Xuandu temple to pray for peace for her family. "Little Xian, grandmother also supports you. As the saying goes, there are 3 good deeds in a day, and in 3 years, there will be blessings. There are 3 evil deeds in a day, and in 3 years, there will be disasters. The Li family is now a wealthy family. Only by doing good deeds can we continue to be wealthy." Old Madame Yi patted Li Zishuan's arm and smiled kindly. The Yi family had 4 generations of Taoists. Under old Madame Ye's influence, many of the teachings of Taoism were already engraved in her heart. She believed in the cycle of karma more than Madame Li. Thank you, Mother. Thank you, Grandmother." Li Zishuan smiled. He didn't really care about karma or how good deeds would be rewarded. He only did good deeds to give himself peace of mind. Gradually, after a short while, the blue-yellow flames of the charcoal came out of the coal hole. The inner wall of the coal hole was also burning red. Li Zishuan looked slightly excited as he shouted, "It's done. Then he used a pair of tongs to pick up the honeycomb briquette in the charcoal basin and carefully placed it into the coal stove. Then, he piled another honeycomb briquette on top of the honeycomb briquette. The coal holes between the two honeycomb briquettes overlapped. After everything was done, he looked at Li Jingma and said with a smile, "Father, what do you think? This honeycomb briquette doesn't burn any slower than charcoal, right?" Before Li Jingma could say anything, Yi Guozhong stared at the honeycomb briquettes on the ground in surprise and exclaimed, "This is amazing! This seemingly useless piece of coal, after little Xian's fiddling, actually burns so easily. This can really be considered as turning stone into gold." The price of charcoal in the Tang Dynasty wasn't cheap at all, especially at the beginning of the Tang Dynasty. There was a record in the old Tang book. Tens of thousands of volunteers gathered in the capital. Firewood was expensive, but cloth was cheap. This was referring to the early Tang Dynasty. When the country was just established, all the volunteers gathered in the capital, causing the price of firewood to rise. Although the price of goods during the Jingguan era was cheap, the price of charcoal was basically maintained at 700 to 800 copper coins per stone, 100 caddies. Good quality smokeless willow wood was even more expensive. Although 7 to 8 copper coins per caddy of charcoal didn't seem expensive, it was a consumable item. How long could one caddy of charcoal burn? For a wealthy family like the Li family, they naturally didn't care about the cost of charcoal. But for the common people, burning charcoal was equivalent to burning money. How many families could afford to burn charcoal? The late Tang Dynasty Taoist poet Chao Tang described the kitchen in a fairyland in his 98 little traveling immortal poems. What do the kitchen maids cook? The stove is full of smokeless jade and red charcoal. In Chao Tang's view, using charcoal to cook was just a beautiful fantasy in fairyland. This poem proved the reality of the use of charcoal at that time. For the common people, using charcoal for cooking was an extremely difficult thing to do. In fact, during the Tang Dynasty, the consumers of charcoal were mainly the upper class of society. During that time, the relatives of the imperial family and the first to fifth rank officials in the capital were provided with charcoal as part of their salary. During the Tianbao era, Emperor Xuanzong of Tang even set up positions in the imperial court to be responsible for matters related to charcoal. In the imperial court, there was also the position of charcoal envoy to be in charge of related matters. It was because of this that Yi Guozhong said that Li Zixuan's honeycomb briquettes were the means to turn stone into gold. After all, those briquettes were difficult to burn in the past. How was it different from stone? But now, after Li Zixuan did this, it completely turned waste into treasure, turning stone into gold. There was a huge amount of wealth behind this honeycomb briquettes. What do you mean by turning stone into gold? This is obviously a meritorious deed. Xiao Xian, this honeycomb briquettes should be cheaper than charcoal, right? Old Madam Yi patted Yi Guozhong's arm, then looked at Li Zixuan and asked. Li Zixuan smiled and nodded. Of course it's cheaper, and it's cheaper by a lot. Grandma, even if this honeycomb briquettes are sold for only 1 copper coin, I won't lose out. He was now a real nouveau riche. For honeycomb briquettes, he only needed to consider the cost of manpower and transportation. The cost of each honeycomb briquettes was even lower. 1 copper coin per piece, he really wouldn't lose out. Yo, 1 copper coin per piece, that's really cheap. Old Madam Yi was also a discerning person. She estimated that each honeycomb briquettes weighed at least 1 caddy. The price of 1 caddy was less than 1 copper coin. Compared to charcoal, it was simply too cheap. Brother, the honeycomb briquettes on top are also burning. It's so warm. Lana stared at the coal stove for a long time. At this moment, she suddenly shouted. Her little hands touched the outside of the coal stove to warm herself up, and her little face was full of excitement. Li Zixuan looked at it, then picked up a piece of honeycomb briquettes from the ground and put it into the coal stove. In the end, he said, this stove usually needs 3 honeycomb briquettes at the same time, so that the heat can be transferred to the stove. Now that the 2 briquettes below are already burning, the one above will burn even faster. Xiao He, go to the kitchen and give me a copper kettle and fill it with water. Yes, young master. Xiao He responded and hurriedly pushed open the door and went out. Yi Fashion guessed Li Zixuan's intention and asked, Cousin, are you going to boil water on this stove? That's right. The honeycomb briquettes, other than being used for heating, are also used to boil water and cook rice. And its advantage in this aspect is something that even charcoal can't replace. Li Zixuan replied with a smile. After a while, Xiao He came back with a copper kettle. The kettles of this era were made of pottery and copper, but their appearance was still very different from the modern kettles. Li Zixuan was too lazy to care about these things now. To him, it was fine as long as it could be used to boil water. He placed the copper kettle on the stove and opened the lid of the ventilation hole of the coal stove. After a while, the fire in the stove became more vigorous. In less than a quarter of an hour, there was a chee-chee, hoo-hoo sound coming from the kettle. Mrs. Li said in surprise, This honeycomb briquettes boil water really fast, much faster than firewood. Li Zixuan replied, Mother, not only does this thing boil water quickly, it also lasts for a long time. Don't look at the 3 honeycomb briquettes inside. If you only use them to boil water, 1 honeycomb briquettes can burn for 6 hours at most. You need to change 4 honeycomb briquettes a day. If you only want to keep the coal fire burning and leave a small hole in the ventilation hole, 1 honeycomb briquettes can burn for about 12 hours. You only need to change 2 pieces of coal a day. This way, you can avoid the trouble of starting a fire every time. Combustion requires a certain environment: combustible, oxygen, and temperature. A single honeycomb briquettes can't be burned because they can't maintain the temperature. Honeycomb briquettes can only burn normally in the stove, and at least 2 honeycomb briquettes are needed in the stove. A normal household stove needs 3 honeycomb briquettes at the same time to boil water and cook. Li Zixuan said all this from his experience. In his previous life, his family burned honeycomb briquettes for at least 10 years, so he knew the characteristics of honeycomb briquettes like the back of his hand. Beside him, Yi Yuzhu, old Madame Yi, and the others were all stunned when they heard Li Zixuan's words. Burning a full day of coal in the stove only requires 4 honeycomb briquettes, which is 4 copper coins. If they burned charcoal for a day, it would cost at least a few hundred copper coins. 4 copper coins versus a few hundred copper coins. This was a difference of nearly 100 times. Even if you don't use charcoal, you still need firewood. The people outside Chang and city can go up the mountain to cut firewood, but the people in the city have to pay for the firewood. Calculating the cost of firewood for a day, it was about the same as burning coal. It has to be said that this honeycomb briquettes really save money. Moreover, this thing doesn't have smoke, so it's many times better than firewood. Little Xian, this is a good thing. You don't know how much effort it will take to boil water and cook with this stove and the honeycomb briquettes. If this thing is sold, the people, regardless of whether their family has money or not, will rush to buy it. Madame Li beamed with joy. When she had married Li Jingma in her early years, she had changed from a rich young lady who had never done any household chores to a virtuous wife who was capable in both the hall and the kitchen. She knew the difficulties of the kitchen the best. Before coal and oil were developed and used on a large scale, there was almost no energy source that could compare to the importance of firewood. Firewood was the main source of firewood for cooking. That feeling of being burned by smoke and fire was really a kind of pain. Cousin, how much does this stove cost? Yi Fashion suddenly asked. Li Zixuan muttered, This stove is made of pure iron, so it's naturally more expensive. The cost of each stove is about 150 copper coins, but the lifespan of each stove is at least 5 years, so there shouldn't be any problems within 5 years. 150 copper coins, 5 years. If you calculate it carefully, using a stove and honeycomb briquettes to boil water and cook is indeed very cost-effective. But I reckon that many poor people won't be willing to fork out so much money to buy a stove. Yi Fashion, who matured early, knew many more things than his peers. He immediately understood what the biggest obstacle was if the coal-burning method was to be implemented on a large scale. Little Xian, can we sell this stove to the people at a loss? Anyway, we don't lack money now, so we can treat it as doing good. Madam Li was a kind person. After listening to Yi Fashion's words, she couldn't help but suggest to Li Zishuan, Mother, although I don't care about money, this isn't the way to do good. There are millions of poor people in this world. Even if we spend all our money, it won't make much of a difference. In my opinion, doing good has to be sustainable. We can't just do it once, and there won't be a next time. Regarding the price of the stove, I will find another way. Mother, you don't have to worry. Li Zishuan shook his head. In his previous life, those world-class tycoons, such as Bill Gates, donated almost all their wealth to a fund under their name for charity. At that time, they had even persuaded Mr. Ma to donate all his assets like them. But Mr. Ma did not agree. This was because Mr. Ma felt that if money was donated to the poor, it would be dead money. Once the poor finished using it, that portion of money would be completely gone. However, the money in his hands was living money. It could be used to create more jobs, help more young people start their own businesses, and even help more poor people. Li Zishuan felt that Father Ma's approach was very clever. Although he was rich now, he wasn't rich enough to help all the poor people in the world. Only by constantly accumulating strength could he continue to do good. Little Xian is right. There are too many poor people in this world. If we risk losing money to help all the poor people, it's tantamount to killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. It won't last long. But little Xian, you said that there's a better way. What is it? Li Jima had been a businessman for half his life. Of course, he understood the stakes. He first agreed with Li Zishuan's opinion, then asked. In the family, except for Lan, everyone's eyes were on Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan frowned in thought, then smiled and said, This method, wait until I come back from a trip to the palace tomorrow. Now that we have the stove, let's eat hot pot tonight. In the middle of winter, the whole family eating hot pot together around the stove was probably the happiest thing in winter. Li Zishuan's mind couldn't help but recall the scene of his family eating hot pot during the new year in his previous life. He felt an inexplicable bitterness in his heart. Hot pot? What's hot pot? Can it be eaten? Yi Guocheng had lived for a long time, but this was the first time he heard the term hot pot. He couldn't help but ask. Li Zishuan was stunned. He thought to himself, is there no hot pot in this era? After searching the memory of his predecessor, he quickly changed his words. Ahem, this hot pot is similar to antique soup, but the hot pot that I make is even better. Wife, let's go and help your husband prepare some food. According to the Book of Wei, in the Three Kingdoms era, when Qiao Pai was the emperor, there were already hot pots made of copper, but it wasn't popular at that time. During the northern and southern dynasties, people used hot pots to cook pigs, cows, sheep, chickens, fish, and other kinds of meat. Later, with the increasing economic and cultural development of the country, cooking technology was further developed, and all kinds of hot pots appeared one after another. During the northern Song dynasty, hot pot was already available in the taverns of Kaifeng in Bianjing in winter. However, the hot pot at that time wasn't called hot pot, but antique soup, which got its name from the gudong sound when the ingredients were added to the boiling water. It was an original delicacy in China. In Bai Ji's poem, Asking Lu 19, Green Ant's New Fermented Wine, Red Clay Small Stove. Late night for snow. Can we drink a cup of none? He vividly described the scene of eating hot pot at that time. Okay, husband. Han Yushi smiled, then quickly got up and followed Li Zishuan to the kitchen. Chapter 1037. Wife, help me fry some sesame seeds. Husband. Xiao He, go and find someone to peel some garlic for you. Yes, young master. Xiao Shi, don't I remember that we have peanuts at home? Go get some and peel them. Yes, young master. And Zhao, do we have mutton at home? Yes, young master. It's just that the mutton smells a bit strong. Young master, do you really want it? Yes. Not only mutton, but also fish. Hey, today I'll show you my knife skills. He planned to cut some mutton rolls and make some fish balls. In the kitchen, Li Zishuan had put in a lot of effort for this hot pot. He planned to use all the seasonings at home, because the key to whether or not the hot pot was delicious was whether or not the dipping sauce was good. He planned to use sesame sauce mixed with peanut butter, Then sprinkle some garlic, soy sauce, salt, vinegar, chives, and mustard. Although there was no chili, the overall taste would definitely not be bad. Sesame and garlic were both introduced into China during the Western Han Dynasty. Of course, there were these things in the Tang Dynasty. As for peanuts, this was a bit more complicated. Modern scientists generally believed that the origin of peanuts was in South America. After the great geographical discovery in the 15th century, it spread from South America to Europe, Africa, and Asia. However, there are also scholars who believe that China was also one of the origins of peanuts, based on two archaeological discoveries in the 50s and 60s of the 20th century. In 1958 and 1961, a number of peanut-like plant kernels were unearthed from the Wuxing Qianshan ruins in Zhejiang and the Xiushui Shanbei ruins in Jiangxi. Among them, the unearthed specimens in Jiangxi were more complete. After identification, it was confirmed that they were peanut kernels, and they existed around 2000 BC. However, archaeology was very strict when it came to certain conclusions. Out of the two discoveries, only one of them could be confirmed as a peanut specimen. This kind of isolated evidence was far from enough to prove that peanuts were originally from China and were not introduced from America after the great geographical discovery. Therefore, there is still debate about the origin of peanuts in the academic world. This book tentatively assumes that peanuts existed in the Tang Dynasty. Li Zixuan cut up a few large plates of mutton rolls. Everyone in the kitchen was dazzled by Li Zixuan's miraculous knife skills. Fortunately, Li Zixuan had internal energy. If he had transmigrated into the body of a weakling who could not even truss up a chicken, he would not have dared to play like this. Seeing that Han Yushi had finished stir-frying the sesame seeds, Li Zixuan asked his wife to start stir-frying the peanuts. He personally ground the stir-fried sesame seeds into powder. As for the peanuts, he would do the same later. When the time came, the two sauces would be mixed together according to the ratio. Together with the seasoning, it would basically be done. As for the hot pot dishes, other than the lamb rolls, there were also Li Zixuan's special fish balls, chicken slices, pork rolls, and other meat dishes. As for the vegetarian dishes, there were only beans, sprouts, and tofu. The vegetables in his greenhouse hadn't even grown yet. This was also the only regrettable thing. After preparing the ingredients and the dipping sauces, Li Zixuan returned to the main hall. He picked up the wind-chasing sword that could cut iron like mud and began to modify the table. He actually dug a circular hole in the middle of the square wooden table. It was exactly one size bigger than the diameter of the coal stove. Old Man Li frowned as he watched. In his heart, he thought that his son was really a prodigal son. After everything was done, Li Zixuan placed the coal stove onto the table. By raising the coal stove, he made the coal stove extend out of the hole in the middle of the table. "All right, wife, serve the dishes. San Bao, go to the kitchen and bring the pot over. Also bring some water." Li Zixuan clapped his hands and said, "Speaking of which, he really put in a lot of effort in order to eat hot pot in the Tang Dynasty." After a while, the washed and cut ingredients were all placed on the table. A big pot was placed on the coal stove that passed through the dining table. In front of everyone was a gray dipping sauce sprinkled with chopped green onions and garlic. It looked very tempting. "Xiao Xian, how do you eat this? Don't tell me that after the vegetables are cooked, you still have to take them out to dip them in?" Yi Guozhong stared at the bowl of dipping sauce in front of him and asked in puzzlement. Sometimes, he was also very curious and wished that he could pry open Li Zixuan's head to see what was inside. Who asked this guy to come up with new tricks every once in a while? Good. Grandfather's eyes are really sharp. Actually, if you directly put all the ingredients into the pot and cook them, some things won't taste good if they're overcooked. The most authentic way to eat hot pot is to pick up the fresh vegetables and put them into boiling water. After boiling for a while, you take them out and dip them in the seasoning. It's fresh and delicious. At this time, the boiling water in the pot was already boiling. The bottom of the pot was actually just some seasonings like ginger, salt, green onions, and oil. It was very simple. As Li Zixuan spoke, he picked up a few pieces of mutton rolls and stirred them twice in the pot. The bright red mutton rolls turned dark gray in a short while. Li Zishuan directly put the boiled mutton into the dipping sauce bowl and dipped it in it. He smiled and said, "Although raw mutton has a strong, rank odor, after it's boiled and dipped in the dipping sauce, not only will the rank odor be reduced, but it will also be very delicious. Grandmother, try it first." After saying that, he put the dipped mutton into old Madame Ye's bowl. Old Madame Ye beamed with joy and said, "Good, good, good. My good grandson. Grandmother will try it." Yi Guozhong, who was beside her, could only stare helplessly. The old man was very depressed in his heart. He could only follow Li Zishuan's steps like a child and boiled mutton for himself with a pair of chopsticks. Delicious. This mutton is so fresh and tender. The dipping sauce tastes so good too. I've lived for so long, but I've never eaten such delicious mutton. Old Madam, you put the mutton in the bowl into her mouth and chewed lightly. The freshness of the mutton rolls mixed with the fragrance of the sauce. In an instant, the taste buds on the tip of her tongue began to absorb the delicious taste of the mutton rolls like a person who hadn't eaten for 3 days. "Lon also wants to eat the boiled mutton, brother," Lon shouted after hearing old Madame Ye's evaluation. "Come, brother will help you. Father, mother, wife, grandfather, everyone, let's start eating." Li Zishuan called out to his family as he boiled the mutton for Lon. "Ha! Eat. Everyone eat. This mutton is really delicious after being boiled like this." Yi Guozhong also tasted the freshness of the boiled mutton and said excitedly. Soon, the atmosphere in the house began to rise. Eating hot pot was all about one person and many people. Only then would it be lively and warm. "Yo, why are you eating so early today? Looks like I came at the wrong time." Chapter 1038. "Oh, this mutton is so delicious. How can good meat not have good wine? Xiao Xian, quickly get someone to bring the wine. I'll have a good drink with your father and grandfather." Everyone said that there was a Cheng Yao Jin who appeared out of nowhere, but Li Zishuan ate a Cheng Yao Jin in the middle of the hot pot. The old demoness had come here to see how the Li family's greenhouse vegetables were growing, because his family's farmstead and Qin Xiong's farmstead had recently started to introduce greenhouse vegetable planting technology. The result, the old man did not even look at the greenhouse vegetables. The moment he entered the house, his eyes were fixed on the mutton, fish, and dipping sauce on the table. After interacting with Cheng Yao Jin for so long, how could Li Zishuan not understand what this old man was thinking? Thus, he did not say anything and directly, tactfully, invited Cheng Yao Jin to eat hot pot together. In any case, with this old man's status, he did not have to worry about Wu Ho arresting him for the curfew when the sky turned dark. Cheng Yao Jin gave Li Zishuan a look of approval, then sat down and started eating. As the saying goes, eat big pieces of meat and drink big bowls of wine. After eating for a while, Cheng Yao Jin felt that something was wrong, so he shouted for Li Zishuan to bring the wine. Li Zishuan had no choice but to let San Bao go to the wine cellar to get a jar of immortal drunken wine. After the wine was served, the atmosphere became even more lively. Cheng Yao Jin was a straightforward person. In this year, he had become quite familiar with fatherly. Yi Guozhong had been in a high position for a long time, so he was also experienced and knowledgeable. The three of them had a lot of common topics to talk about. Li Zishuan felt that Cheng Yao Jin's alcohol tolerance wasn't very good. Moreover, he only wanted to eat hot pot and didn't really want to drink. Therefore, he didn't join them. He ate happily with Lon, Madame Li, and old Madame Yi. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Cheng Yao Jin burped and returned with the smell of alcohol. Before he left, the old man did not forget to tell Li Zishuan, "Burp, Xiao Xian, your family's hot pot burp is too delicious. Later, I'll send my chef over. Burp, you have to get someone to teach him. I old Cheng, haven't eaten so much in a long time. Burp, I drank so much." The old man had completely forgotten his original intention of coming to the Li family. The only thing he remembered was the hot pot. It had to be said that in a situation where there was no war, the desire for good food was old Cheng's greatest pursuit now. The next day, near noon, Li residence. "Feiji, take these blueprints to the workshop. and give them to Faubert in the next 2 days. Li Zishuan called Pang Feiji over, took out 2 pieces of paper, and handed them over. Yes, Marquis. Pang Feiji left. Li Zishuan asked people to carry a coal stove and a basket of honeycomb briquettes into the carriage. The coal stove was still burning, and then he rode the carriage to the palace. He wanted to see Lier. As for the blueprints that he just gave to Pang Feiji, they were the radiators and heating pipes that he had just drawn in the morning. The structure was quite simple, and he had already measured the dimensions in the morning. As for the dimensions of the house in Yinshan Villa, he had drawn the blueprints of the villa, so naturally, there was no need to measure them. Li Zishuan planned to install self-made heaters for his residence in Yinshan Villa at the same time. Anyway, now that he had the honeycomb briquettes and the coal stove, he just needed to set up a pot and arrange some pipes, and it was basically done. This was made by imitating the self-made heaters in the villages in his previous life. The principle was also very simple, a big boiler that boiled water. The furnace was double-layered, and the top and bottom were closed. The top was connected to a steel pipe, and the water pipe went up from the flue to the heater water supply. This point was the lowest point of the water pipe, and the heater end was the highest point. There was an exhaust valve, and the slope was 1%. The bottom level was connected to the heater return water, and the top of the return water pipe was connected to the heater water supply pipe. The height of the return water pipe was higher than the highest point of the supply pipe, and there was a water supply tank at the back. The bottom of the return water pipe was the lowest point of the heater, and the slope was 1%. The water in the furnace was heated and turned into steam, and through the water pipe, it dissipated to the highest point and turned into a mixture of hot water and steam. The hot water entered the radiator to dissipate heat, and its temperature decreased, density increased, and volume decreased. It entered the boiler through the return water pipe, and thus formed a circulation circuit. The slope of the water pipe for self-made heaters was very important. If the slope was reversed, it would not be hot. The water layer in the furnace had to be thin, 1 to 3 millimeters, because the thick water layer would consume coal. The exhaust valve at the highest point had to be opened, or else the whole system would be closed, and there would be an explosion. The reason why Li Zishuan had only started to install a heater now was because he didn't have honeycomb briquettes or a coal stove. It was very inconvenient to boil water because charcoal could not last as long as honeycomb briquettes. Now that he had created the honeycomb coal and coal stove, he had to quickly install the heating in his house. In the imperial palace, Lier returned to the Lijiang Hall in Shiyuan right after the morning court session because there were charcoal braziers and heaters here. Although he was an emperor on horseback and knew martial arts, he was far from being invulnerable to cold and heat like a martial arts grandmaster. In this kind of weather, he would also feel cold. Lier had just spoken for a while with Empress Zhang's son in the Lijiang Hall when an attendant from the Yellow Door came to report. Your Majesty, the Marquis of Yong, and requests an audience. Lier was stunned for a moment before he laughed out loud. Oh, when did this brat take the initiative to look for me? Did he say what happened? Ever since Li Zishuan entered the officialdom, most of the time, he would only enter the palace when Lier summoned him. It was extremely rare for him to take the initiative to enter the palace like today, replying to Your Majesty, the Marquis of Yong, and said that he is here to present a treasure. That attendant replied cautiously, Present a treasure? Huh. Today, new things are happening one after another. Let him wait at the Sweet Dew Hall first. I will be there soon. Lier's curiosity was piqued. He didn't care about the cold weather outside. He put on a fox fur coat and prepared to go to the Sweet Dew Hall to meet Li Zishuan. After all, this was the imperial harem, and Li Zishuan was already an adult and a married man. Of course, he couldn't let him come here. If it was at the beginning of the year, before Li Zishuan was married, Lier might have met him in the imperial harem. But now it was absolutely impossible. Your Majesty, this concubine also wants to see what treasure the Marquis of Yong and is offering. I wonder if I can go with Your Majesty? It was Empress Zhang's son who was also interested. She asked Lier, since Maid Guanyin is interested, then let's go together. But it's very cold outside. Maid Guanyin, you have to wear an extra layer of clothing. Lier laughed and agreed very straightforwardly. Thank you for your majesty's concern. His concubine knows. Empress Jiangsuan's heart warmed. A palace maid helped her put on a mink fur coat before the husband and wife left. Chapter 1039. Greetings, Your Majesty. Greetings, Your Majesty. In the sweet dew hall, Li Zixuan saw Li Er and Empress Jiangsun walking out from the back of the hall. He quickly retracted his gaze and bowed towards the two. Rise. Li Er waved his hand and couldn't wait to get straight to the point. I heard that you are here to present a treasure, but why don't I see the treasure? Although Li Zixuan was young, he was extremely cunning. Usually, it was hard to take advantage of him. Today, he actually took the initiative to present himself. Li Er really wanted to know what surprise Li Zixuan brought. Li Zixuan said solemnly, Your Majesty, the item that I brought today is a little big. It's still outside the hall. May Your Majesty allow me to get someone to bring it in? Oh, quick, Zhao Song, get someone to bring the item that Duke Yeoman brought in. Hearing this, Li Er immediately said, A little big? Now, he was even more curious about what Li Zixuan brought. Zhao Song received the order and left. Moments later, he brought in 4 eunuchs carrying a coal stove and a basket of briquettes. Seeing the eunuchs carrying in a lump of metal and a basket of black items, Li Er couldn't help but frown, because these 2 items didn't look high and mighty at all. Feeling slightly unhappy, Li Er walked down from above and looked at Li Zixuan unkindly. This is the treasure that you want to present to me? What a special coal stove. Halfway through his sentence, Li Er realized that there was a fire burning in the stove. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Li Zixuan cupped his hands and said, Your Majesty, this isn't a coal stove. This is a coal stove. Inside is burning coal. Coal? How can coal fire be so strong? Li Er wasn't the kind of emperor who didn't know about worldly affairs. Hearing this, he immediately frowned in disbelief. At this moment, Jiangsun also walked down from above. She carefully sized up the honeycomb briquettes in the bamboo basket and said after a moment, Your Majesty, the briquettes brought by the Marquis of Yong and are very special. Not only are the coal briquettes of the same size, there are also many holes of the same size in the middle. This concubine guesses that it is because of this that the fire in the furnace is so strong. Li Zixuan was stunned. Then, he turned his head to look at the bamboo basket. As he looked, he asked, Li Zixuan, is what the Empress said true? Li Zixuan cupped his hands and said with a smile, Your Majesty, the Empress has sharp eyes. Just as the Empress said, the reason why the charcoal balls are so easy to ignite is because of its special structure. Because these briquettes were shaped like honeycombs, I call them honeycomb briquettes. Today, the treasures I present to Your Majesty are this coal stove and the honeycomb briquette. Li Er calmed down and nodded. To be able to turn useless coal into this kind of easily flammable honeycomb briquette, it is indeed a treasure. In that case, the imperial court might be able to consider mining a few coal mines next year. But how did you make these honeycomb briquettes? Seeing the honeycomb briquettes, Li Er felt as if he had seen a pile of gold. The great Tang had discovered many coal mines in the Hedong Road area, but because the raw coal was hard to burn, the mining value was not high. But now it was different. Li Zixuan said helplessly, Your Majesty, these honeycomb briquettes were made by smashing the coal briquettes, adding a binder, and casting it through a mold. Today, I present these 2 items to Your Majesty. First, I want to show Your Majesty the advantage of combining the honeycomb briquettes and the coal stove. Second, I want to discuss something with Your Majesty. Advantage? What advantage? Could it be that these honeycomb briquettes are easier to burn than charcoal? Li Er asked. Li Zixuan repeated what he had told his mother and grandmother yesterday about the advantages of using honeycomb briquettes to boil water and cook rice. Before Li Er could say anything, Jiangsun couldn't help but exclaim, That's right. For honeycomb briquettes can boil water and cook rice for an entire day. Marquis Yong, and is what you said true? Li Zixuan smiled and nodded. Absolutely true. And a normal family cannot boil water and cook rice for an entire day. So the actual consumption of honeycomb briquettes is definitely less than this. Huh, good stuff. This is really good stuff. Lisa Schwan, let me ask you, how much does this honeycomb briquettes and the coal stove cost? When Lier heard this, he could not help but feel that the honeycomb briquettes were more convenient than the coal briquettes. He laughed and asked. Lisa Schwan replied, "The cost of a honeycomb briquettes is less than a copper coin. As for the coal stove, it is about 150 copper coins. But a coal stove can be used for at least 5 years." Lier nodded. That's right. It's cheap and practical. The commoners will definitely like it. This is really a treasure that benefits the country and the people. Huh, I also like it. Empress Zhongsun had a worried expression. Your Majesty, although the honeycomb briquettes are cheap, the price of the coal stove is on the expensive side. Not everyone can afford it. To fully promote the use of coal stoves and honeycomb briquettes, I'm afraid there are still many difficulties. Lier's face instantly darkened. Clearly, he agreed with what Empress Zhongsun said. Lisa Schwan bowed and said, Your Majesty is right. This is also the second reason why I came to find Your Majesty today. Lier's gaze darkened, and he said, Speak, Your Majesty. Now that the Tang Empire has been stable for less than 10 years, the price of charcoal in the eastern and western cities has always been high. Burning charcoal is no different from a fantasy to the commoners. But in winter, the weather is cold. Other than boiling water and cooking rice, most people also need a fire to keep warm. Chang is the capital of the Tang Empire. Every year, many poor commoners freeze to death, not to mention the other remote areas. There will definitely be more people freezing to death. And now that there are cheaper and more durable honeycomb briquettes, the price of charcoal will definitely continue to drop. Correspondingly, there will be more and more people who can afford to burn coal. But to the commoners, the price of coal stoves is indeed too high. But without coal stoves, the use of honeycomb briquettes is extremely limited. And now that it is winter, there are still many poor commoners who are suffering from the cold. So, honeycomb briquettes and coal stoves must be promoted to the commoners together. And in order to help the commoners survive the winter, I can sell the honeycomb briquettes and coal stoves at cost price to the poor commoners without earning a single cent. But my power alone is ultimately limited. So, I have a small request, and I hope Your Majesty will allow it. Lisa Schwan said slowly with a sincere face. Hearing this, Lier was silent for a moment, and he said, It's good that you still have this kind of heart. I really didn't misjudge you. Actually, since the beginning of winter, I've been thinking about how to reduce the number of commoners who freeze to death. But in Chang'an alone, there are tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of poor commoners who are suffering from the cold. The money in the national treasury cannot be used now. If you have a way, quickly say it. As long as your request is not too much, I will allow it. Chapter 1040. Inside the Sweet Dew Hall, Lier and his wife stared eagerly at Lisa Schwan, because Lisa Schwan had just mentioned a problem that they were very concerned about, which was the problem of the poor people freezing in winter. In fact, in the previous dynasties of the Tang Empire, no matter which dynasty, many people would freeze to death every year. In the era where cotton had not been planted on a large scale, the price that the people had to pay to wear warm clothes was too high. Your Majesty, I wish to set up a public welfare organization to help the poor people. Lisa Schwan clasped his hands and said the idea that he had been brewing in his heart these days. Public welfare organization? Marquis Yong, and what is public welfare? Empress Zhongsun was puzzled. Lier also looked at Lisa Schwan curiously, thinking, why does this kid always pop new words out of his mouth? Could it be that he learned all these from that dream? Your Majesty, the so-called public welfare is related to the welfare and interests of all the people of the Tang Empire. I set up this public welfare organization mainly to call on the rich people to donate money. Then I will use this money to help the poor. At that time, every time I receive a donation, I will donate 4 coal stoves and 200 honeycomb briquettes to 4 poor families. My workshop will not earn a single cent, and will just treat it as doing a good deed for the people of the Tang Empire. Li Er's face was bewildered as he said, "This is for no reason at all. Why are you suddenly so kind?" Li Zishuan let out a sigh. In order to make old Li believe him, he could only pretend to sigh deeply and say, "Your Majesty, many people are very poor. My heart aches when I see it. I remember that I read a poem 2 days ago and was deeply moved. I wonder if your Majesty and your Majesty are willing to listen to it?" Li Er was even more suspicious. "Poem? What poem? Read it." Empress Zhangsuan's face also revealed an interested expression. Li Zishuan saw that the time was right and did not keep them in suspense. He slowly opened his mouth and said, "This poem is said to be written by a teacher from a village outside the city. The old teacher passed away 2 months ago and left this posthumous work. I saw by chance. I am a dignified man, but after reading it, I could not help but want to cry. Get to the point." Li Zishuan began to fabricate an empty yet reasonable main character for the story. Li Er, on the other hand, seemed a little impatient. His face darkened as he said unhappily. Li Zishuan hurriedly cut to the chase and recited in a deep voice, "Ahem." The poem went like this. "In August, the wind roars angrily, rolling up my house to the 3 layers of reeds. Mao flew across the river and sprinkled on the outskirts of the river, openly hugging Mao into bamboo, lips parched and mouth parched, unable to breathe. Returning home, leaning on his cane, he sighed. The cotton quilt has been cold as iron for many years. Jiao Er has been treading on the bed and cracking inside. Since she lost her sleep, the long nights have been soaked with sweat. Building thousands upon thousands of mansions, great protection for all the poor people of the world. Wind and rain do not move, as calm the mountain. Whoosh! What did I suddenly see this house before my eyes? Even if my house is broken, I will still be able to freeze to death." Du Fu's The Song of the Thatched House Being Broken by the Autumn Wind, which was also a must-memorize poem in middle school, was affectionately recited by Li Zishuan in this kind of situation. A miserable scene of the house leaking on an autumn night, wind and rain intertwined. The cotton quilt was like iron. Jiao Er has been treading on the bed and getting wet all night. Unable to sleep, suddenly appeared in the minds of Li Er and Empress Zhang's son. But a poem by a dignified poet would not be so simple. Showing the misery of one's life was only on the surface. The deeper meaning was in the latter half of the poem. The last few sentences of the poem had a change of style. For Li Er and Empress Zhang's son, the image of a stooped old man who was in a difficult situation but still worried about the country and the people. The sharp contrast between the front and back made this image particularly distinct. It simply pierced the depths of one's soul. Empress Zhang's son covered her mouth. The rims of her eyes were somewhat red, only to hear her murmur in a low voice, "The cotton quilt has been cold as iron for many years. Jiao Er has been treading on the bed and cracking inside. Building thousands upon thousands of mansions, great protection for all the poor people of the world." Marquis Yong, and you just said that the old man who wrote this poem has passed away? Li Zishuan bowed and said, "According to the news I received, the old man is indeed no longer in this world. It seems that he froze to death." This fellow was secretly muttering in his heart, "Great poet Du, don't blame this junior for stealing your poem. This marquis is also to realize your dream of great protection for all the poor people of the world." Empress Zhang's son, who had always been graceful, strong, virtuous, and magnanimous, showed a rare weak side at this moment. Her face was mournful and pale. The old man was destitute and dejected, but still worried about the country and the people. Such a person actually froze to death at home. It is really the misfortune of the Tang Empire. Li Er didn't say anything, but his face didn't look too good. After hearing Li Zishuan recite the poem, he first felt that he was a bit like a fatuous ruler. Otherwise, how could there be people under his rule who were full of wisdom, but didn't get the chance to use their talents, and finally froze to death in poverty at home. However, he quickly calmed down and felt that there were many suspicious points. The biggest suspicious point was that according to Li Zixuan's range of activities in the past 3 months, he could determine that the old man he spoke of was in a village near Chang and City. However, since that village was very close to Chang and City, if there really was such a talented old man in the village, how could there not be any news in Chang and City? As long as there was a slight movement, his subordinates would definitely be able to find out. Therefore, in the end, Li Er's heart was already 70% to 80% sure that the old man that Li Zixuan spoke of at the beginning was completely nonsense. However, even if he was sure, what could he do? Inside and outside Chang, and there were indeed many people who suffered from the cold every year, just like what was described in the poem. Although those people might not have the profound consciousness and lofty ambition to build thousands of houses and shelter the world from the cold, they were still Li Er's people. They should not be frozen to death. It is indeed a good poem. The person who wrote this poem is also a great talent. The thousands of thoughts in Li Er's heart could only turn into a long sigh. At this time, Li Zixuan struck while the iron was hot and said, "Your Majesty, Your Highness, the original intention of this official to set up the Public Welfare Fund was to gather everyone's strength to help those poor and destitute people, or people like the old man who had talent but had no opportunity and was in a difficult situation. Only in this way, tragedies like the old man's would become fewer and fewer." Empress Zhongsun took a while to calm down her emotions. She turned her head and said to Li Er, "Your Majesty, Marquis Yong'an's method of setting up the Public Welfare Fund is really novel. This is the first time I have heard of such charity. However, it will not bring pressure to the national treasury. Your Majesty, why don't you approve?" Li Er looked at Li Zixuan and nodded. "Yes, I approve. I allow your Public Welfare Fund to be set up in the name of the Imperial Court." Li Zixuan smiled and cupped his hands. "Thank you, Your Majesty. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.